across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Alex. 3 minutes after 1 o'clock here on Talk 2525. As you just heard, Reform UK now claiming to be the official opposition to Labour, with Sarah Pochin winning the Runcorn and Helsby by-election. Just 6 votes in it, but of course the overturning of that Labour majority is the big headline there. Nigel Farage's party making historic gains in local elections, securing more than 80 seats. What does it mean in the grander scale? Is Reform now the official opposition to Labour? Our lines are open. Also this afternoon, refugee households claimed over £1.1 billion in benefits last year. That, by the way, we've been crunching the numbers at this end, is a 33% increase as more asylum seekers were granted refugee status and record numbers continue to cross the channel. They're just scratching their heads going, why did we lose all these council seats? I wonder, Keir, Kemi and others. And leaked documents reveal senior officers in West Yorkshire Police intervened to give a job to an ethnic minority candidate who failed her interview, sparking accusations the force has lost the plot and become obsessed with race. More on that as well. Nothing surprises us anymore. 0344 499 1000. In fact, the last 2 stories that I just read out there are kind of, they sort of answer the very question we're raising here this afternoon. So, and you've heard what the politicians have been saying. You've heard, they always say, well, we got a bit of a kicking, didn't we? But, you know, we're listening to voters. And, of course, Reform absolutely trouncing in areas previously unthinkable and against parties that you might have thought, well, surely the Lib Dems would be safe there. Not necessarily. Big questions now remain. Is it a blip, a brief moment, a quirk, a political idiosyncrasy? One of those moments like Wimbledon winning the FA Cup back in the day. Impressive, shocking, incredible, unprecedented, but ultimately a one-hit wonder. A protest vote, that's what it is. A rebellion, a never-to-be-seen again result. Don't you believe it? This is game-changing, a totemic tipping point in the political landscape in this country. And I'll come back to what I just said at the very top there. 2 stories I read out. Refugee households claiming over 1.1 billion in benefits, obsessions with DEI in local authorities and areas like the police, etc. All of this stuff, okay, in itself would not be game-changing. But what has happened in this country in the last... Certainly, it's been brought into sharp focus in the last 5 years, but it's been happening long before that, is that this curious sense that we are living in a world that is upside down. It's topsy-turvy. Night means day, black means white, up means down. Forget everything you ever knew. The world has changed. You can't quite ever find these mysterious people that have made these kind of seismic changes to everything from recruitment, what you can say, what is a woman, goodness me. The strange, curious and miserable list goes on. Now, of course, there's much more to life than all of those things, but collectively, they begin to form a pattern. A pattern of, frankly, insanity. A pattern that the world has lost the plot. A pattern that this country has completely seismically lost its way. You never meet the specific person responsible for these bizarre patterns. When it comes to the obvious, we mention this almost every day, people rowing across the channel. Yes, I know they don't specifically row, but you get the point. 11,000 now, something like that, last few days. Weather has been absolutely glorious. Perfect scene. And we have politicians say, no, we can't stop that. Nothing we can do about it. In fact, not just that we can't do anything about it, we will actually embrace it and we will finance it. And so when you live in that world, how long can that go on for before you say, hang on, enough is enough? Now, the Conservatives don't get out of this, of course. They were in the driving seat for lots of years. They oversaw this. They fed into this. They endorsed this. Whether you're talking about net zero, whether you're talking about gender recognition, whatever it is you want to talk about, they are as up to their necks in this as the Labour Party. Now, I'm not suggesting Reform are about to form the next government. I mean, that is still several more mountains to climb. But boy, if this doesn't show the direction of travel, I really don't know what does. And what we're looking at the moment is a set of results that, whilst anticipated, a year ago could never have been predicted. You now have a situation, Reform UK 190 seats, Conservatives 72, down 150, the Lib Dems 45, that's up 23, good for them, Labour 21, down 49, some independents have got in there. I love an independent, why not? 17 of those, and there's 9 Green councillors so far. Big headlines, Andrea Jenkin, of course, getting the mayoralty over there in Links, and the biggest headline of all being the by-election where we saw Reform UK claiming it from Labour. And this was interesting, not least because, and again, I'm hearing commentators go, it was only 6 votes. But not really only 6 votes. I think it was probably 15,006 votes. I think that probably tells the story slightly more accurately as well. That's overturning pretty much a 15,000 majority. This is huge. It's game-changing. I don't believe it's a phase. I don't believe it's a blip, a brief moment, a political idiosyncrasy. It is much more than that. The tipping point has arrived, a totemic tipping point. It's as if we needed Isabel Oakeshott in the studio to talk through this, and as if by magic, bing, you're here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited by what's happening in politics. Yeah. You know, this is, as you say, I think it is a watershed moment. I think this is a moment where people begin to see the possibility that the old historic dominance of the 2 supposed main political parties, sometimes propped up by Lib Dems, is no longer going to be the status quo forevermore. And, you know, for Conservatives, I have to say, this is a huge shock, because they have always thought that their position as the representatives of the right of politics is completely unchallengeable, that it's there 100%. Forevermore, and that anyone that comes in and threatens that position is only a little brief, frankly, little joke. That's how they've always considered it. Absolutely right.
And I look back to 2010 when David Cameron came in, and in many respects, he was kind of the worst of all of them in that sense, because whilst we could pick up all sorts of names along the way and say, well, Theresa May wasn't exactly fantastic. She endorsed a lot of the kind of claptrap that we talk about regularly in a big way. Boris Johnson doesn't get away scot-free. Remember his big amnesty for immigrants when he was Mayor of London? You know, we know what sort of underneath Boris...
God, I've forgotten about that. Imagine trying that now. I mean, the thing is that now you don't actually have to announce an amnesty, because that is the effective situation the whole time.
100%. But I think with Cameron, although I thought he was quite effective and a very slick kind of operator in that
prime
respect.
Ministerial,
he looked prime ministerial, met him a number of times, nice bloke, etc. But actually, I think what him and Osborne did was the kind of classic, there is a sort of a groupthink, a way of doing this. Don't worry about silly inconvenient arguments about immigration and stuff like that. Let's just move on, get on with it. Everything's going to be tickety-boo. We'll allow these little fringe parties, little UKIP over there as they once were.
Fruitcakes and loonies.
Yeah, they could. That was the line, wasn't it? And we'll allow them to have their little say, but it's not going to make any sizable difference. Voters go right down the centre, and that's where we are. Fatal error from David Cameron, I think, but it sort of set this trend and it's continued. And here's Starmer doing exactly the same thing. They really believe that Starmer's in another league of inadequacy, frankly, but I mean, this sense that there is this blueprint of how you function, forgetting that the world has changed, things move on, whether it's gender, whether it's the aforementioned immigration, whatever it happens to be, not keeping up with the times, I suppose.
And I think, you know, cast back a year, I was saying this on Mike's show earlier, you know, I've been on the inside of the reform movement since it began, and, you know, we never thought that it was achievable without changing the voting system, you know, without proportional representation. How can an insurgent party, how can a new party actually make headway? And I think there is a huge amount of naivety still amongst people who set up political parties and think, well, you know, if I throw a bit of money at this thing, you know, I'm sure I can make a huge impact. And it is a long, hard road in which you are mocked and jeered and ridiculed and trivialized and told you'll never get anywhere. And the truth of the matter is that for the vast majority of newly formed parties, that is the case. But the reality is that a huge opportunity opened up on the right when the Conservatives deserted that ground. And that is why Reform has been able to get in there. And you were mentioning earlier about the only 6 votes that won Runcorn. I mean, it's an astonishing result. Actually, in this case, a win is a win is a win. 6 votes, yes, got Reform over the line, gets Reform another MP, which is super important because they're such a small team in Parliament. But it's the symbolism of winning that seat. You know, I said yesterday on Kev's show, I think it was, actually none of the rest of it matters. As it happens, Reform's done very well in many other respects. But if they can win Runcorn, that's what's going to really produce the shockwaves.
And overturn, you know, as I said at the beginning, you know, it's not just 6 votes, it is the symbolism of it. It is the first past the post, which all those other parties have gone, no, this is how it is, this is the best way. It's okay, well, it's the best way, it's a win. But the overturning of Labour's seat there, I know that, you know, their previous guy, Nigel Benn, what was his name, the boxer, the MP, him, who didn't quite go to jail, but
Mike Amesbury. Where'd you get Nigel Benn from?
Well, I was just thinking of famous people. I was thinking of famous people who punch people.
Oh, okay, right.
That's where I was going with it. But yeah, there it is. And so yes, they had their woes in that respect, but this is, you know, this is huge. I mean, it really is huge. And it doesn't feel like a one-off.
It is huge. I suppose cold hard reality is that Reform will still only have 5 MPs in Parliament versus Labour with its monster majority, and the Tories still with their 100 and whatever it is they have. But the Conservatives look a bit irrelevant at this point. Where is Kemi Badenoch? I haven't heard anything from her.
No, not at all.
De facto leader Robert Jenrick's a bit quiet, probably waiting to defer to Kemi Badenoch to say something. It is, in these circumstances, it sort of protocol-wise, it ought to be the leader that's all over the airwaves. But yes, Reform still has a long old way to go, and 4 years is such a long time. You know, any number of crazy things can happen between now and general election polling day, all sorts. I don't think Keir Starmer is going to be leading the Labour Party into the next election. What happens if someone comes in who's actually quite good? You know, that could radically change Reform's fortunes.
Well, let's have a listen then to the new MP, the Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby. She's Sarah Poaching.
Someone who is committed to working hard for them, someone who's experienced in public service, 20 years as a magistrate, 8 years as a borough councillor. I know and understand what makes people's lives better, and I will work tirelessly to do that for the people of this constituency.
Yeah. Pale, male and stale was another one of the accusations that used to be thrown at parties like Reform.
Yeah, well...
there's a game changer. I wouldn't normally pick up on a gender point.
No, but I think it's really important, actually. I mean, the truth is, I haven't felt particularly happy about the fact that it was 5 blokes representing Reform, now only 4, but now we have a woman, so we've got 5 and a fifth of them are female. And we've also got Andrea Jenkins now as that Lincolnshire mayor. So I think that's really important. You know, parties do need to represent people, the people that they represent, as it were. This is a whole, you know, DI debate, but these are women who've got there without having to have any special treatment, that's for sure. Yeah, indeed. There are some other stories around, but I said right at the beginning, so many of the stories actually dovetail into why the above result happened. Exactly. Yeah. Like this, refugee benefits hitting 1.1 billion amid record asylum approvals. Critics urge the ECHR reforms, mass deportations, tougher migrant housing, and as Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp calls for Labour's bid to smash the gangs a sick joke. Let's have a reminder. We never tire of playing this clip, Isabel. It's worth having a listen again. This is Keir Starmer smashing those gangs. Here he is. Love it.
You will have helped to smash the gangs, take those gangs down. But smashing the gangs, no shortcut, smash the criminal gangs, no gimmicks. Have to smash those gangs. Just the hard graft of sleeves rolled up, smash the gangs, practical government. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. We will smash the gangs that undermine our security. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
Smash the gangs.
What a muppet!
The people smuggling schmans.
Do you remember Smash in the 70s or 80s? Was it the 80s? You know that potato, the potato,
which bizarrely was made by Cadbury's.
Was it?
What, Cadbury's Smash?
You had to put water in it, and it was. Do you know what? I really liked it with butter on it. It was so nice.
I reckon that's probably great mash.
I don't know why I'm thinking of it. It's just smash. I don't think it's a thing anymore.
But there's a couple of takeaways from that. There's many takeaways from that. I mean, firstly, the smash the gangs. It's so stupid. It's such a bizarre thing to say.
Just to say it again and again, it doesn't make it any more effective.
Correct.
Just by how many times you say it.
But also, the other thing you get there, I was just saying this in the break to Alex Phillips, it's not in his DNA. It's not in Labour's DNA to be. So whenever they say or try to talk tough on things like immigration, they sound like the embarrassing
It's
uncle.
inauthentic.
It doesn't sound right. So they will say, "Well, we've learnt from these results. We can address these things," but you don't believe them. And
we all know
the big game changer.
The trouble is the scale of the immigration crisis is so great that only something truly radical is now going to change the situation. By truly radical, I mean mass deportation of illegal immigrants. I mean stopping the boats or detaining and deporting. And, a handful of deportations every week just isn't going to cut it. Not while far more people every week are coming over the channel than we're sending back in any other direction.
100%.
The numbers are completely off the dial. And Keir Starmer's never going to say these things. Again, he's never going to say we're going to leave the ECHR. It's that our membership of that treaty, that agreement, that is at the heart of so many frustrations when it comes to our inability, apparently, to remove some of the most appalling characters who've come over here, taken our hospitality and repaid the British people by committing awful crimes.
Yeah, and there you heard that headline, refugee benefits 1.1 billion. That's a 33% rise in a year.
I mean, this is insanity.
How bad does it have to get?
This is insanity. I think that a proper right-leaning government would simply say, you are not going to qualify for any benefits until you've been in this country 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. I don't think many other countries allow you to just come in and live off the state. It's not a thing.
Reform taking control of Staffordshire County Council. So
now
these are big.
Yeah, now
headlines.
Reform's going to have to show that it can run that well, and that's the test. There'll be a lot of scrutiny on any Reform-run councils, and there's bound to be mistakes. You're going to have new politicians, people who've never done this before, in positions of having to assess the value of contracts and some quite technical stuff. Particularly in relation to budgets and so on. And it's going to be very important that Reform gets that right in as many places as possible, because my goodness, the scrutiny will be intense.
100%. Isabel's with us on the programme, back with more stories. That central question as well, is Reform UK now the official opposition in this country? Your thoughts on that and your wider comments as well on what happened last night, whether it was mayoral, local, by-election, whatever. Come in on this in whatever form you fancy. 0344 499 1000.
You can't claim to be the party of low tax when the Conservative government put up taxes higher than they'd ever been since the Second World War. And you can't claim to be the party
Well, we
of
did out of
controlling...
necessity.
Well,
Look,
but the fact is you did it. It doesn't matter.
Well, no, I think this is key because, well, I know we had to do it because we spent £400 billion on the pandemic.
Yeah, but you can't claim to be...
As soon as we could start reducing taxes, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, no, I get that. But Nigel, you can't claim to be the party of lower taxes if you're putting them up to the highest level they've ever been at.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We are Talk. I was about to say Talk Radio, Talk TV.
We're all of these things.
We're all of these things. We are Talk. And we are with Isabel Oakeshott talking about the results last night and a whole load of other stories as well. This text came in from David in the Cotswolds. Says, afternoon, Isabel and Ian. I don't feel Reform's success is about people voting right-wing like the BBC or Sky wants us to believe. It's about people voting for a party that speaks human, talks common sense and understands what UK people feel. That's not right-wing, that's just being right.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about on this radio and television station, isn't it? It is about just the common sense stuff. You know, he's so right. How can it... So much of what we do is so defying of any common sense. What, allow a load of people to come across the channel that you don't know and then put them in 4-star hotels and then give them benefits for unlimited amounts of time and then not deport them even when they commit terrible crimes. Is that common sense? No. Is it right wing to think that's daft? No.
Yeah. We were saying, I don't think this betrays anything, you've mentioned it before. We were just talking during the break. You live part of the time in Dubai. And you were saying that's a great example of how you can have a multicultural system.
It is so brilliant the way they do multiculturalism there, because there are very clear rules that everyone signs up to. You've got to all respect each other, and people do. There's virtually no crime, and people just let each other get on with it. There's no, you can't have demonstrations on the street for one country or another. There's no foreign flags, you know, from some crazy cause, you know, loud protests. It's just not a thing. I was walking along the other day, struggling with some shopping bags, and a young man came up to me and said, "Would you like some help?" And I toyed with the idea of saying, "No, I don't need any help." And then I thought, well, I do actually. It's really hot, and these are heavy. So we walked along and, you know, had a nice chat. And he said, "It's part of my religion to be helpful." And he was a young Muslim guy, you know. And I just thought, what are the chances of that happening on the streets of London? You know, more likely someone's going to knock into you and then scowl at you as you've kind of by mistake touched them in some way. You know, it's just that kind of base level of anger I feel here. And anger comes, I'm in London today while we're talking, anger comes when people are struggling, you know, and I think that there is that feeling in the UK that people are having such a rough time, you know, just trying to make ends meet, and yet there's this huge and swelling class of incomers who are not contributing, and of course that's going to breed resentment.
100%. Mike in Lincoln says, afternoon Ian and Isabel, I fully expect any councils that Reform take control of to start getting lots of obstructions from government and indeed the Tories. They're going to try their utmost to try and show Reform can't govern. They're still in denial that their time is done. It's a great point from Mike in Lincoln. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, brace yourself, guys. You know, the celebrations are only going to last for this evening, because then you've got to actually do the job. It's always like that, isn't it? When you get a new job or you win some business, you're like, oh yes, and
now I've actually got to do the thing.
And then you're like, oh crap, I've got to do the job.
Yeah. And as you said, we did a programme the other day, and I can't remember what the premise was or what our main question was, but you were talking about, and we've talked about it before, how hard it is to get a new party going. And it isn't just the finances that are required, it's the graft and the toil and all that go, the obstructions, as was just mentioned, everything that gets in the way. Curiously, I mean, the Lib Dems have had since 1988 to try and get a party together, and of course they've got 72 MPs. I get that, you know, but you'd think by now the Lib Dems might have
won a majority.
Well, wherever I go, I said to my little boy yesterday, "Who are you going to vote for?" Then he's only 10, and he said, "Oh well, what?" He said, "Well, only know about the Liberal Democrats, and he only knows about the Liberal Democrats because round our neck of the woods, I can't believe leafy Sevenoaks, Liberal Democrat badges and flags literally everywhere.
It is the same, I can tell you, in my part of West Oxfordshire, you know, one of the most affluent parts of the UK. Lib Dems are everywhere. They're crawling all over the place.
But they've never really cracked the same. The zeitgeist, shall we say, in the way that Reform UK have.
They've had some pretty poor leaders. I mean, I think we've got an exceptionally poor Lib Dem leader at the moment, and their policies are just too. They're just too kind of affluent, if you like. They're kind of first world problem policies. They would reject that. I'm perhaps not being very articulate about this, but they completely fail to understand in this era the fundamental things about the frustration over immigration, over net zero and so on. I mean, people vote for them. A lot of people genuinely vote Lib Dem because they think they're somewhere between Labour and the Tories. They think they're in the middle. That is not the case, folks. They're way to the left of Labour.
100%, yeah.
But people don't realise that. You'd be astonished how few people realise that. They think that it's just, oh, well, I don't like Labour, I don't like the Tories, I'll go for the one in the middle.
Yeah, I actually got the knock on the door from the Lib Dem candidate.
Yeah. They don't knock at my door.
I didn't answer the door. The others just put the leaflets through, and so I kind of hid a little bit and made sure that I didn't get into conversation. And then the leaflet came through, and doing this for a living, I did genuinely read the leaflet to see what it said.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know. Doing this for a living, you've done this a similar amount forever. We've done these kind of jobs. I couldn't tell you what the Lib Dem stand. I have no idea what being a Lib Dem
I mean,
is.
it's just basically being, unlimited immigration, net zero, climate stuff. I don't know. It's just lefty stuff.
Yeah, it's just about being a Lib Dem.
So I guess that tells you something. I'm a political commentator. I'm immersed in this stuff. If you said to me, can you name 5 specific Lib Dem policies, I would not be able to name one right now.
Well, if you asked me to name 5 specific Lib Dem MPs, I'd struggle to name one.
I think I would as well, actually.
I could do a couple.
That brings me to a point about, with only 5 MPs, is reform, can it ever be the real opposition? And this reminds me of when I was a very junior reporter on the London Evening Standard in their political team, and it was very hierarchical in those days, and it was, the political editor, the deputy, the Whitehall, and then there was me at the bottom. And I remember, I was number 4, and I remember someone said to me, well, number 4 is what number 4 does. So, it's all about whether you are prepared to be number 4 or actually you're going to just punch above your weight. And I think that that is a possibility for MPs of any party. You can be an independent and still make an awful lot more noise than others.
Do you know what? That was the other result that I kind of, my heart sung a little bit. I love an independent getting a seat anywhere.
Yeah, it's great.
I think it's fabulous that somebody has their own ideology, their own thoughts.
Instead, I'm going to stand up and be me.
Yeah, exactly. And they come, they go pounding the streets, they knock on doors relentlessly.
Really hard, really
all
tough.
Their own money, maybe a few mates chipped in for the leaflets, etc. And there's 23 of them at the moment, so congratulations to those 23. Question came in here from Paul, who says, Ian and Isabel, the naive left say far right because it's all they've got. They don't know what else to say. They can't reason with common sense. They also defy facts. And we should, I think, Isabel, just finish on this story, because it does, as I said a second ago, there's a lot of these stories all feed into this. West Yorkshire Police allegedly overruling an interview failure to hire an ethnic minority candidate, later scrapping transfer interviews amid claims of racist hiring practices. Now, when you've got a situation like that, again, it's this level, this topsy-turvy, upside-down world where common sense and normality and convention has just been flung out the window at 5,000 miles an hour, and you end up with nonsense like this.
Yeah, I mean, I've written quite a lot about this as West Yorkshire Police again. I mean, they really are blazing a trail for the most ridiculously, corrosively woke police force in the country. I mean, this is a police force where they talk about likes of you and I, Ian, as being in the global, we're the global majority.
That's right. Yes, they love that phrase.
Hang on.
We're the global minority.
We're the global minority, and ethnic minorities are the global majority. I mean, well, what?
So shouldn't they be hiring us then?
Please,
if we're the minority?
Please just talk English so that
Exactly.
we can all talk human,
Yes.
be normal.
It's up there with cis woman, isn't it?
Oh, what is it? I still don't know what a cis woman is. It's just a woman, isn't it?
Like the
I
several
don't know.
branches of being a woman, apparently.
Yeah, I'm not a cis woman. I mean, please, give me strength.
Anyway, listen, Isabel, I'm sure your day is not done, but it's been great to see you. Thank you. Isabel
Thank
Oakeshott,
you.
Talk's international editor, with us on the programme. Over to you as well. Is Reform UK now the official opposition? We'll talk to Kate Ferguson in a moment, political editor at The Sun on Sunday. Dan Barker from Reform UK is going to be with us as well. And former Labour policy advisor Patrick Diamond. I wonder what he's got to say. Details coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 25 to 2 on Talk. Welcome back. We've got Kate Ferguson with us, political editor at The Sun on Sunday. She's hot-footed it from another floor in the same building. Nice to see you, Kate.
Hi, good to be here.
Listen, I mean, we thrive, we get out of bed in the morning for days like this when there's some proper chunky news out, real headlines, game-changing headlines and all sorts going on here. And there's no doubt about it. I mean, we can write the headline in various different ways, but it was Reform what won it.
Yeah, it's a huge day for Reform. So they had this big test. Can they actually turn that poll, not lead, but that poll bounce they've experienced since the general election into real votes, into real victories? And they have. I mean, they've won that Runcorn by-election, just 6 votes in it by the skin of their teeth. But that's a huge victory for them. One of Labour's safest seats in Merseyside fallen to Reform. We've seen councils already fall. We're expecting Durham Council to go Reform. That is the heart of the Labour Red Wall. That council was Labour for 100 years. Yes,
that's astonishing.
It's astonishing. I mean, recently it's been wobbly, but that Red Wall, which once fell to Boris, it's now falling to Reform.
Yeah, and of course this is a party, I keep saying this, Reform UK have been going for about 5 minutes. Yeah. And I know they've only got 5 MPs now. One obviously has gone. They would have had 6, but they've got 5. But nonetheless, I mean, I mean, the Lib Dems they've been around for 30, 40 years, whatever it is. They've never penetrated the kind of public thinking, feeling or sense in the same way. They've been around, and I was just saying to Isabel Oakeshott, you know, depending on where I live, you know, curiously, you'd think it'd be, you know, die-hard Tory, the MP is a Tory, but Lib Dem posters everywhere, and you think, wow, these people are going to be running the world soon. They never have. They got into coalition for a little bit, but, you know, they've never... But here's reform, 247 council seats. They're going to be running at least one county council, possibly more. I mean, and a by-election and a mayoralty. Goodness me, I mean, this is, you can't write it in any way. This is huge news.
Yeah, I mean, this really could be a seismic day for British politics. The whole story of British politics, going back 200 years since modern politics was invented in this country, has been a two-party state. Liberals versus Tories, Labour versus Conservative. It's always been a battle of the two parties. Who can take over the middle ground will win the election on a first past the post big majority. Now we're seeing reform kind of blow that up. We are also seeing it splinter other ways. So Lib Dems are doing well in some councils, Greens eating away at the Labour vote on the left, but Reform have swooped in. They're bleeding the Tories out. The Tories are collapsing, bleeding out to Reform, and Reform is starting to eat into this Labour vote too. So is this the end of two-party politics in this country as we know it?
Indeed, and I think it's just something you just said there is interesting, this governing from the centre thing, which has always been the line that's been said. But of course, the centre moves as well.
It does.
I mean, that's the issue. Margaret Thatcher governed from the centre, but people see her as a rabid right-winger now when they look at it. But governing from the centre is meant to be... It doesn't take into account, firstly, as I said, you know, that does shift, but also other narratives come around. You know, the debate around immigration is greater than it's ever been. The debate around net zero, around gender, all of these issues, that sense of when people look across the pond and say, how did Donald Trump win the election? Because of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I say from the centre, I think what I mean is that you've got to respond to the core issues voters have in a way they can relate to. Now, that is, yes, the NHS, it's things like the economy, and it is borders. What that concretely means can shift around really quite radically. And I think we're in a world in politics, an age of politics where voters want to be able to relate to their politicians, and quite few politicians are relatable. So that's what Donald Trump did so well in America. It's what Boris did very well. It really accounted for a lot of the Boris bounce in Britain when he was on top. And now we're seeing Nigel do it. You know, he's a lad, he's relatable, he says what he thinks. And that will cut through in a way that kind of more pristine, cautious politicians really struggle to.
Yeah, and Nigel Farage, you know, whatever people say about Nigel Farage, I've known Nigel for a long, long time. I've sat and had a beer with him, had a cigarette with him, and I mean, in fact, the last time...
banned now?
It is banned. We were outside, and that was about half a year ago. I remember, you know, a couple of people walking past in the street. All right, Nigel stops and has a chat in a way, and this is not him acting it or playing it. I've done that with Tories and Labour MPs, as you will have done. You can see how clunky and awkward some of these people are. It always goes with the territory. Farage just wheels out a normal conversation. Hello, mate, how you doing? You know, what's going on in your life? Everything all right? You know, he's quite real about it.
Exactly. Look, I mean, I don't think it's being kind of like overly nice of Farage to say that is one of his strengths. I've been on a walkabout with Farage up on the local campaign trail a few weeks ago when we did the interview, and it was that thing that you used to get with Boris, right, which is people stop him in the streets, from old ladies to kind of teenagers, young lads. They want him to kind of kiss the baby, hello, how's it going? A bit of a kind of Jack the Lad walkabout. He has that, Boris has that. It's just a fact that few politicians have that, and Nigel plays that for everything it's worth.
Indeed. Let's bring in Dan Barker. Dan, of course, is a spokesman for Reform UK, former Conservative candidate for Manchester Mayor, defected to Reform. Afternoon to you, Dan. Can you hear us, Dan, or are you muted?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. We've got you now.
Okay, good.
Well, it's a huge congratulations to your party. There's no doubt about that. Just give us your overview, as we've just been discussing here, of what happened in the last 24 hours.
Well, it's been a fantastic night, and there's still results to come in. I mean, that win at Runcorn is seismic. I went there, 6 or 7 times myself to help out. She's a great candidate, Sarah, and now our first female MP. We're very pleased about that. And I think, people talk about the fact it's 6 votes, and it is very close, but the swing was absolutely enormous. Over 20% is what it from the general election. And what it shows is that we can beat Labour anywhere in the country now.
And in terms, I mean, just to pick up on the 6 vote thing that you mentioned there, of course, it isn't just 6 votes, is it? It's an overturning of 15,000 majority of 6, which is absolutely massive. I mean, in terms of those people that will look at this, I said at the beginning, there's obviously going to be those on the sidelines talking about how this is a, a one-hit wonder, like Wimbledon winning the FA Cup years ago. It's impressive, but ultimately it's a protest vote. It's a rebellion. What do you say?
Absolutely no way. And I think even if you said that last year's general election results was a fluke, you've got to look at what's happening now with the not only winning on a by-election in the Red Wall, with winning at least 1 mayoralty, hopefully 2 when we get the results in from the East Coast. We're winning council seats. We've got Staffordshire County Council, and I think we're fairly confident we may win Lancashire and Durham outright. So this is winning at every level of government, and I think we're only at the beginning here. And I think that nothing will stop us now.
And winning county councils, I mean, this is big stuff, isn't it? This isn't like, and not to in any way underplay the role of a parish councillor, for example. I mean, running the county council, these are huge budgets and huge responsibilities. This is, if you like, proper local government.
It is, and it's affecting people's daily lives. Lancashire County Council, for example, is £1.4 billion in debt under the Conservative control. So if we do get control of that, we are going to have to deal with all that. And it's a chance for us to prove that reform government is going to be good government.
Do you naturally there's going to be critics who say, OK, now you've got the job, this is where the real work starts, because ultimately, by definition of a new party, newish party, it's perpetual opposition for a long time. Getting the gig and being in charge of big bucks and people's lives is a very different place to be. Reform have still got a lot to prove here.
You're right, Ian. We do have to show the public that we can be trusted to run public services, and I think we will do. But we've said already on the campaign trail that what we'll do is something akin to the Doge that we've seen in America, perhaps at the council level. We've said we'll send in the auditors. Obviously, we'll do it in a more British way than perhaps the Republicans have gone about it. But the outcomes will be, we're intending to be the same, is to highlight waste, bringing in more efficiencies. If there's any corruption there, we'd want to get rid of that. And we will show that by taking that kind of approach, we can be trusted. And then next year, of course, 26 is the Senedd elections in Wales that are coming up. Yeah. And we hope to do very well there. If we get an outright majority in Wales, we will have control of the NHS in Wales.
That would be absolutely huge, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so we can show that what we can do there, we can turn the NHS around in Wales, we can turn around these councils, we can do it anywhere, and that will be our pitch for government next time round.
What do you think might happen, Dan? I don't expect you to have the answer to every question. We know that Keir Starmer's going to be closing, so he says, or at least reducing all of those migrant hotels. Maybe local authorities will be better placed to be running this system, essentially taking houses off the list, which previously would have been earmarked for people who'd lived there forever, etc. Do you sense a reform council, a county council, would step up to the plate on that one? Would that be, can you imagine that being the first test of saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Starmer, whatever you're planning to doing, and asking local authorities, it ain't going to happen in this county, whether it's Staffordshire, potentially Durham, potentially Lancashire?
Well, I think we'll watch this space, because I think you'll see a real difference on those sorts of issues where we can push back. I mean, I've seen on social media circulating a construction worker who claims that he's been asked to leave his property to make way for one of these houses the Serco had wanted to take over for the hotel people, as he calls it. Yeah. And I think, what Labour haven't foreseen is that we're seeing productive members of the country, vulnerable families, mothers and children, being thrown out and being made homeless for people who've effectively broken into the country. Now they're on the taxpayers' bill. I just don't think the establishment, Labour, Conservative, Tories, Lib Dem, I don't think they appreciate how the sense of injustice and fairness that this drives, And
but that could be a big test, couldn't it, of reform? If they are running councils, they could be in a position to certainly speak very vocally and oppose those positions. Indeed, we will see. Dan, again, congratulations. Thank you. Dan Barker, Reform UK spokesman, with us on the programme. I mean, Kate Ferguson is still with us. Kate's, of course, political editor at The Sun on Sunday. Just a brief word on that point of Wales next year. I mean, that would be the big game changer. When you start essentially running a country, the health service and all that goes with it.
Yeah, huge. So we're talking today about this bigger seismic change. It's all about Wales next year. Farage and Reform think they've got the opportunity there to take control. Yeah. That, as you point out, that is running a whole administration. Huge test to reform, huge opportunity. Also would be huge blow to the Tories if they manage that. I suspect you'll see a leadership challenge to Kemi then. So we could see things really escalate this time next year.
Indeed. Let's bring in Patrick Diamond, former Labour policy advisor. Patrick, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. All the usual cliches apply. Not a great day for the Tories, not a great day for your party either.
Well, yeah, let's get away from the cliches. This is obviously a very disappointing set of results for Labour. There's no question about it.
Hang on, that's another cliche, Patrick.
That's not a cliche. That's a fair reflection of the results so far.
All right, fair dues.
I don't think you could say that these results point to disaster because there are some high-profile mayoral positions that Labour retained, for example, in the west of England, also on North Tyneside and so on. But clearly there was some heavy defeats, and I think a lot of the commentary around the unpopularity of decisions the government has taken, the winter fuel payment being withdrawn, for example, the hike in national insurance on small businesses, these are obviously all points the government's going to have to reflect on very seriously.
Yeah, and just to bring Kate back in, I mean, your readers would have been very animated about things like that, particularly winter fuel allowance.
Winter fuel allowance is the biggest political misstep this government's taken. It's going to be a millstone around their neck, I think, for the entirety of this term. I don't sense any indication yet that they're going to U-turn on it, but it bombs on every doorstep, comes up in every focus group, and is the big political miscalculation of the Keir government so far.
Patrick, just to go back to your party, to Labour, I mean, it's, you know, when you were advising Tony Blair and the like, I mean, it's in a slightly different place now, but Mr Starmer says, you know, we're going to listen, we'll learn from this. Has he got the political, not just the energy, but the political strength to muster up decent and robust responses to what has gone wrong, particularly on areas like immigration?
Well, he's already dealing, I think, with the immigration issue very effectively. I mean, the Labour government has put in place, you know, very robust measures on immigration control. I think significantly more robust than what we saw under the Johnson and Sunak governments. But I think the next election, if we're looking ahead to the next election and what this tells us, it will still be overwhelmingly determined on the issue of the economy. And the question that voters will be asking is the British economy stronger? Are their living standards higher? Are their wages improving? Have they seen a significant change since 2024 when they kicked the Conservatives out? So I think that's still the fundamental issue. And, you know, Reform have done very well, as you rightly said, Ian, but there's still some big questions about, would you trust Nigel Farage? Would you trust Reform politicians to run the economy in a very insecure world? Trump tariffs, all of those issues bubbling away. I think those are still the big questions that will settle the immediate future of British politics.
Do you really think Labour have done well on immigration? We've had 11,000 people row across the Channel on boats since the start of this year. It's getting to a record level under Mr Starmer, more so than the year before.
Yeah,
I mean, that's abject failure, right? I mean, the very antitheses of what you just said.
No, there's no scope for complacency on immigration policy, but if you look at the measures that this Labour government has substantively put in place, we have a significantly tighter regime now than what we saw under the Johnson and Sunak government. So this government has gone very far on immigration. Of course, it will take time for voters to realise that, and there are still issues which are very much playing out on the ground. You mentioned with the spokesperson from Reform the issue of asylum hotels. Clearly, that's still causing a great deal of concern and animosity in different communities around the country.
Just a final point, Patrick. When Tony Blair came in '97, we all remember it well. Things can only get better. The big handshakes, Tony and Cherie walking up Downing Street. There was a real thirst for change back then, right? It was that sense that, you know, the Tories were tired and great. You know, even Spitting Image couldn't satirise them any longer. It was getting that bad. Some of them were in jail. Some were about to go to jail. It was a miserable, miserable time. Poor old John Major is probably actually the most decent one of all of them. You know, was the fella in the middle that got the right royal pounding, and he took it with dignity and shook some hands. But Blair came in on genuine change. There was a sense, and I know we can argue about things going wrong with Iraq, but up to that point it was a man with a mandate for change. It felt like something was new. It felt like he meant business. Keir Starmer isn't providing that, is he? Keir Starmer isn't Tony Blair and never will be.
Well, I'm glad that you, Ian, can still remember 1997 very well. I'm just about able to remember those events.
I was only 3, by the way.
Nearly 30 years ago. Yeah, exactly. It feels like such a long time ago. But I think your question underlines the fact that it's a very different world today. You know, the country that Tony Blair inherited in the late 1990s, yes, the major government was very unpopular, but, you know, the truth is the economy was going generally in a positive direction. The government at the time did not inherit the chronic problems that this Starmer government has inherited. So I don't think it's that useful to compare 97 with now. It's a very different situation. The Starmer government is facing a lot of challenges, there's no question about that. But I think the inference of your question is correct. The reason why many voters are dissatisfied, the reason why many of them have turned to reform in this local election, as well as to the Greens and Liberal Democrats in some areas, is because they do not think this Labour government has changed enough. Yeah. And the challenge for Keir Starmer is, can he put in place the changes that will make a difference so as to win the confidence of voters by the time of the next election?
Indeed. Great to have you on, Patrick. We will speak again. Thank you, Patrick Diamond, former Labour policy advisor to Tony Blair. Final word from Kate Ferguson, political editor at The Sun on Sunday. Things can only get better was the mantra back then. People are saying it now. Surely things can get better. That vote for reform, the votes we've seen, the council seats, the mayoral, the by-election, were clearly people sending out more than just a message. These are people that want seismic change, and they don't just want it temporarily. This is not a firework up the trouser leg of Keir Starmer. This is a permanent desire for change. Yeah,
they want change. They're impatient for change. If Keir Starmer wants to get those votes back, he's going to have to prove it with what he does and do that very quickly. That's not just about telling a slightly different story, as some in Labour will have you believe. On things like immigration, it's bringing those numbers way down. On things like economy, it's turning the tanker around. On the NHS, it's letting people get to those really getting those waiting lists down concretely. It's unclear if Labour are going to be able to do that in one term.
Indeed. Kate, great to see you. Thank you. Kate Ferguson, political editor, Sun on Sunday, with us on the programme. Over to you. Is Reform UK now the official opposition? Is that how you're seeing it? You get the spirit of the question. Obviously, literally they aren't, but that seems to be, for many, the way it is going. Thoughts on that? Lines are open. This is Talk.
Andrew Jenkins has won this by a country mile, and I think we're going to win a number of county councils. I'm pretty confident we're going to win Lincolnshire County Council, and of course the big news we've just had out just a few minutes ago, you've been touching on the breaking news that we have won the parliamentary seat of Runcorn and Helsby by that narrow margin of 6 votes, but a win is a win, and it's going to be very exciting to welcome Sarah Pochin to Parliament next week.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Lots to be said on This Is Reform now. Seemingly the official opposition, almost. Well, obviously they're not really. I keep getting people saying, well, they can't be because they haven't got 5 MP. Yeah, we know that literally. The spirit of the question, based on this seismic shift, it appears at those local mayoral and by-election last night. Paddy is in Sussex. What have you got for us, Paddy? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. I mean, I think Nigel wants to become the officially controlled opposition, but if he's the de facto opposition right now, that's going to be short-lived. People who are voting for him want repatriations. They want mass repatriations, and Nigel has indicated he's not going to do that. And I think by the summer, it's going to become blatantly plain that we do. Even the dumbest out there in society will realise we need mass repatriations. Get these people back to the loved ones in the countries they abandoned.
Do you think, there was a question, wasn't there, that came up when, Rupert Lowe had previously talked in those kind of very strong tones, which Mr Farage had, to a degree, kind of said, well, we might not be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So the elections are over. We didn't have any, in the south of England. They were cancelled, if you like.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of time to get the nastiness over and done with, especially if the likes of Elon Musk comes in and backs another party, another candidate. I would prefer Nigel would stay in the role, but I wish he would see the light. And I think, he's going to, or he's out.
There's got to be just a final point, because we're about to hit the clock, Paddy, but a final point. There's got to be some kind of agreement with the Tories now, hasn't there?
Why? I mean, with Reform and the Tories? No. They are just as culpable to this migrant invasion, if probably more so, than Labour.
We will, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, because they've got years of it being under their watch. Paddy, we've got to move. Great call. Thank you for that. We'll take more in the next section. Robert Taylor's going to join us as well to chat over the big stories too. There's some other news out there as well. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Is Reform now the official opposition to Labour? Thoughts on that? Let's get the news, though, at 2.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. We are, of course, responding to huge seismic headlines coming out of local politics over the course of the last 12 hours. Reform UK now claiming to be the official opposition to Labour, with Sarah Poching winning the Runcorn and Helsby by-election. She won it by 6 votes, but overturned a Labour majority of about 15,000. And Nigel's party making historic gains in local elections, securing more than 200 seats. They now run Staffordshire Council. Could be on set to run a couple of others as well. This is big news in the world of politics. Do you agree with Mr Farage? Is Reform UK now the official opposition to Labour? Meanwhile, Harrods is the latest major retailer to be hit by a cyber threat, raising fears of a coordinated attack on Britain's high street. For those of you out there that are regular Harrods shoppers, check the website for details, if it's up. And gas boilers could be banned in new homes from next year under plans by Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner to make heat pumps and solar panels mandatory. And there we go again. These are stories. Said it at the beginning, we will say it forever. When it comes to the weather vane, working out the appetite of the British people, what is important, what matters, what is at the top of your list. Sticking a solar panel on your roof, yeah, great if you get free electricity, fantastic. Mandatory, legal, all of these things. This is the area where Labour and the Tories have failed, and it's absolutely the area where Reform UK are hoovering up. And the sooner that the other leaders get their heads around that rather, I would suggest, rather obvious little factoid, they can start making some serious inroads as well. I don't think they will, by the way. I think it's too much of an ache for them. They've often worked on the basis with this business of kind of, governing from the centre and a sort of certain amount of groupthink and basic convention. This is how we've always done it, which massively ignores the new world we are in, the 24-hour nature of this world, the different narratives out there. Who would have thought, even when David Cameron came into power in 2010, that the question of what is a woman would end up in the Supreme Court. I mean, seriously, who would have thought that? If that doesn't give you a kind of an inkling as to how the world has changed, I don't know what does. And then you sort of throw in net zero, and again, I think I speak on behalf of all people who are to the right. I don't know a single person who doesn't want a cleaner environment. Everybody agrees, yeah. And if your panels work for you, fantastic. If you've got a windmill on your nan's head and it provides, free charging for the car, brilliant. No one's going to stop that. It's the evangelical nature of it. That is a politics that most Brits don't really understand. Not that they aren't intelligent enough to understand. They can totally see the futility, the ridiculousness in some of these policies. They're there for all to see, apart from this curious bunch of left-wing meerkats who happen to think that, the world's going to die if we don't do all of these things. So it's that. It's not, in normal terms, it's not reading the room. That great Trump line that he came out with, I'm saying what you're thinking, or words to that effect, I'm saying what you're thinking. Great one the other day, that I hadn't heard Trump say before. In fact, he might have only said it the other day, when it came to immigration. He said, they said we needed new policies. Turns out we just needed a new president. And it's that, isn't it? It's that, and grabbing hold of, speaking the language of just ordinary people. And then what you do, if you're Labour, and to a degree the Tories, you say that those ordinary people are all right-wing nutters, all mad right-wingers. It's like, it's no. That's the area. That's why you've been given a royal kicking at the ballot box over the last 12 hours for exactly that attitude. Deborah in Essex says, Ian, I'm over the moon with the results for reform, even without the 5.5 million who could not vote. The lion has awoken. What annoys me is the other parties, the mainstream media, cannot bring themselves to congratulate Farage and his team for succeeding beyond expectations, instead criticising and still labelling them as far-right and racist. Exactly the point I was making. This is why they're doing very well and what the British people asked for. Our voices are being heard. Time for change, and it's coming. Great day, great show. Deborah, thank you. Have a lovely weekend, Deborah. That just absolutely brilliantly encapsulates everything that we're about here in terms of what we're asking today. What's gone wrong? What do Labour do? I'm not absolutely sure Labour or the Tories can do anything. And the main reason, as I said at the very beginning, it's not in their blood. It's not in their DNA. When Keir Starmer says, I'm going to get very, very serious about immigration, you just think, you sound like a man who's absolutely not going to get serious about immigration, because you don't understand, you don't feel it, you don't get it, you don't. Your political ideology doesn't even take you into that postcode, mate. And similarly with Kemi, not quite so much, but similarly. But, of course, whatever happened last night with reform, is it enough to become the government in 2029? Well, Wales next year will be a big, more than just a litmus test, actually. It'll be a thumping barometer swing if it goes their way. Let's get a word on this. Robert Taylor, the journalist and broadcaster, is with us. Afternoon to you, Robert.
Good afternoon, Ian.
So much to say on this. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, we talk about, you and I have talked about for years. You've written about for years as well. Appetites change, things happen. Every now and again, there's a huge shock in the system. We're used to seeing, the odd by-election when something, goes in Martin Bell becomes an MP or something like that. We've had these little moments in the past, but this seems something more than a blip. This doesn't feel like a protest. This feels like a desire for absolute change.
Yeah, and when you consider that Reform didn't even exist as a party 3 or 4 years ago, and it's just taken the first by-election of the Starmer regime with a massive swing against Labour. This is seismic. This is a big moment for Reform. It's also quite interesting from the Tory point of view, because I think a lot of Tories voted Reform in Runcorn yesterday to keep Labour out and to give Keir Starmer a bloody nose. So we've talked, you and I have talked, about can there be tactical voting on the right as well as on the left. I think Runcorn shows that that can happen and can actually lead to a kind of unity on the right. It'd be very interesting to see if that is something that continues.
So if, let's take another fictitious seat somewhere, if the very opposite was the case, it was pretty solid Conservative, but, Labour were knocking around there, a couple of thousand behind. If Reform then decided not to give it 4 cylinders and draw back a bit, then the Tory is likely to win. Which, of course, we understand Robert Jenrick talked about something like this, that maybe that's the best way to get an agreement. But would that be enough to kind of come up with an overarching satisfactory result? Because you then end up, presumably, with 2 right-wing parties, but they would be opposing each other in Parliament.
They would be opposing each other in Parliament, and they would have to come to some sort of accommodation. It depends on how much Tories and Reform voters want to get Labour out in 2029. And it looks to me as though Tory voters in Runcorn wanted that. Will Reform do that in Kent, where you live and where I live, next time and sacrifice their first choice to put their cross against the Tories, hold their nose as they do so, with a view to getting Starmer and Labour out? It's a big question. I think it's easier at the moment for Tories to vote Reform than for Reform voters to vote Tory. That's my instinct.
Yeah. It's not going to be dull, is it, the next couple of years on this one? We're going to see how it plays out. And, of course, there's still more results to come in. There's a couple of big councils. We're yet to see who is likely to be shoring those up and leading. They could fall to Reform as well. And, of course, we discussed this in the last hour as well, Robert, that this is where the real work starts, isn't it? Because this isn't Reform just sitting on the sidelines, sniping and opposing. they could find themselves, and will in Staffordshire, controlling multi-million-pound budgets. I mean, they've got to now make the difference.
They have, but there's absolutely no question. This is a breakthrough moment for reform. They are already leading. If you look at the last, I think it's 8 or 9 polls, they're leading. And the very last poll yesterday, I think it was, has reform leading by 8 points. They're heading up towards that 30% barrier. A lot of us have been doubting, can reform go over 30%, even with the Tories and Labour on around 20%? I think they're going to get a boost. I wouldn't be surprised if there are polls this weekend that maybe for the first time have reform over 30%. And then we're looking seriously at a Nigel Farage being Prime Minister. It still sounds a bit strange and almost a bit ridiculous to say it, but it is genuinely possible.
We will watch with interest. Some other news that is out there today. Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner have joined forces to save net zero. I mean, these are the kind of headlines that feed into the very conversation we've just had. This almost obsession, Labour planning to ban gas boilers in new homes by 2026, requiring heat pumps and solar panels. I mean, certainly the heat pump, even environmentalists are divided on the heat pump thing. I mean, solar panels, if you can get them on your roof and get some free electricity, then fantastic. Nothing wrong with that. But the duo, the dynamic duo of Rayner and Miliband, I don't know whether most voters go, wow, this is the dream team we've needed to save our lives.
Yeah, well, politically, it's quite interesting, isn't it, that just when Starmer is weak, just when he's facing, well, yet another, I was going to say the first major crisis, we're going to say yet another major crisis of his premiership, his deputy, if you'll pardon the expression, kind of leaps into bed with someone else. This is Ed Miliband in the political sense, of course, and they're now allied. And we know that Ed Miliband is very popular among Labour members. Yeah. Is it possible? Am I overthinking this, or is it possible that Rayner is saying, I'm going to hedge my bets here, and I'm going to show a really popular Labour cabinet minister in Ed Miliband a bit of support just when it will really hurt Keir Starmer?
It's interesting, isn't it? Look, we live in a democracy. We're not North Korea. People can like and support who they want to, and that's fantastic. But the idea that Ed Miliband is very popular, frankly, anywhere, I find I'm just confused by the basic notion of that. But you're right, among Labour members, because he does kind of nip into that Corbyn part of the Venn diagram.
He does. I think Streeting's fantastic, but Labour members apparently can't stand him. Streeting comes right down at the bottom of their list.
Yes.
The one man who probably the nation as a whole would vote for, would think is much better than Keir Starmer. The Labour members can't stand him. No, let's go for Red Ed Miliband, who already has failed in 2015. It's a very strange mismatch.
Indeed. And this story as well. So Keir Starmer accused of having two-tier Keir, two-tier TV Keir, apparently. Two-tier TV views on after the Silence on Grooming Gang show, but outrage over adolescence. And of course, we're referring to the Netflix show Adolescence, which was, it was good, very nicely done, beautifully filmed, incredibly directed and acted and all the rest of it. I'm not quite sure of the whole theme of it. I thought it was a bit curious. I didn't join in with the kind of adulation in the same way. But Channel 4's Groomed, a national scandal, which revealed the systemic failures in addressing abuse by men of Pakistani heritage. Haven't really had anything from Keir Starmer, but it seemed quite cool to say he'd watched Adolescence and we've got to sort young boys out and make sure they don't go down this wonky Tatian path.
It's all wrong, isn't it? I mean, Starmer loves a drama, and let's just make that clear. It's a drama, Adolescence, and it's not a documentary, whatever the Prime Minister mistakenly said in Parliament. He loves a drama that demonises white boys. But he doesn't have anything to say about a documentary about some British Pakistani men who have committed the most awful crimes. I think that says quite a lot about our Prime Minister. I'd like him to say, let's have this Channel 4 documentary shown in some schools and not a drama, which, however well acted, actually is all fiction.
And do you sense that again, I keep making this point about how many of these narratives feed into the big headlines today and why people go for reform. There is that sort of, and there won't be everybody's cup of tea, and, you know, if there was an election tomorrow, they probably wouldn't win it, but they do rather well. But there is that sense that they talk common sense. They just speak the language of ordinary people. And it's things like this where Keir Starmer really struggles. He doesn't seem to be sort of almost have it in him, the desire or anything to speak in these kind of tones.
He doesn't at all. And this, of course, is where Farage is so great, because he really does say it as it is, like him or loathe him. He says what he thinks, and he's prepared to say things that may be politically incorrect, to use that old-fashioned term. But he comes out and says it anyway. He does talk human. He does talk common sense. Keir Starmer, I'm sure he's got many strengths, but that is certainly not one of them. If I was a Labour MP, and I think a lot of them are now, thinking we need to look seriously at who's going to lead us into the next election, is Keir Starmer up to it?
Spot on. Robert, listen, that's it from us. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the sunshine. It's only going to last for about another 20 hours. Robert Taylor, the journalist and broadcaster with us on the programme. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. A little bit of breaking news. Prince Harry has lost his latest stage of his court battle for his personal security to be provided by the police. The Prince's taxpayer-funded protection was changed in 2020 after he stopped being a working royal. He appealed, with his lawyer arguing that he was singled out for different, unjustified and inferior treatment. The court decided this was not the case, and he's lost that stage in his battle to have personal paid-for security provided by the British police. And I think most people looking on at this, I mean, I get the fact that he's a high-profile person, but so is Taylor Swift, for goodness sake. You know, he legged it for the hills. He didn't want to be a royal anymore. I think probably when you decide to quit the royal family, I think all the bells and whistles that go with it probably disappear as well. Why he would be surprised at that, I don't know. He tried and he's failed. Details to come. 0344 499 1000. More comment from you on the way. Is Reform now the official opposition to Labour? They were the words of Nigel Farage. Do you echo that? Your sense, your thoughts on what happened at those local elections, mayoral elections and that by-election as well? If that's your neck of the woods, I want to hear from you as well. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
In the past, President Trump was sort of drunken with the talking points of Vladimir Putin, whom he thinks he has a special relationship with. I think that need-to-need discussion that Zelensky and Trump had in St. Peter's basilica during the Peeps funeral, which was just an astounding picture, had a big impact on him. And I think President Trump listened this time to Zelensky and took Zelensky at his word. And as you and I and everybody who follows this stuff know, Zelensky's speaking the truth. He's not a dictator. Yeah. He's democratically elected. How could he be a Nazi? So I think Trump absorbed that messaging.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This came in from Paul in Wiltshire. Afternoon, Paul. He says, regarding Nigel not wanting mass deportations, people have to remember that Reform already have their core voters in the bag. If they're going to gain power, they need to widen their voter base, which means appealing to people with more liberal views. As far as I'm concerned, Nigel Farage and Reform are playing things just about right. Yeah, they've certainly, and I don't blame them. I mean, if you look at the results across the whole country, then... And by the way, the results across the whole country will speak for themselves. But if you look at the results, if you look at the amount of council seats, 20,000 of them, most of them will not be Reform councillors. Maybe 500 will. But of course, we haven't had votes in all constituencies in all areas. So yes, they absolutely do. And it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but Reform absolutely have to widen their appeal. That doesn't mean seismic changes in policy or ideology, but you've got to have a nod in some directions. At the moment, we know the Tories have lost 300 council seats. They've got 131. The Lib Dems have gained. They're up 47, about 131. Labour, 31 seats, down 103. And Reform UK have gained 361 seats. They are up 361. So this is fresh terrain for Reform, and they've gone and hoovered it with a booster rocket and then some. I mean, just incredible stuff. But of course, the critics will say it's a blip, it's a brief moment, a quirk, a political idiosyncrasy. I think that is not the case. I think you have to seriously look at this and say this is the game changer, the totemic tipping point of British politics. This is the students of politics in years to come will look at this and go, well, it started like this. And of course, there's more, local elections to come over the next 4 years. This is one snapshot, but boy, is it a game-changing one. Let's go back to your calls on this. Pav is in Harrow, 2:25 by the way. Pav, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
What are your thoughts?
Well, look, the fundamental issue, as far as I'm concerned, is people can moan about Reform, they can moan about Trump, they can moan about disinformation, misinformation, all they want. But the reality is these types of politicians and parties are a product of the fact that the normal chatterati and political classes have shown little or no empathy, humility, and understanding of basically the basic needs of the electorate. You just take this now for a second before I come back to what I think the long term is. If Starmer had come out today, let's be honest, not the most protonable Prime Minister we've ever had, but if he'd come out with his first speech, showed a bit of humility, said, look, we had an adverse result, we need to do something about it, bit of optics, maybe he could have rescued it. Instead, what's he do? Comes out his opening speech, Ukraine, defence sector, talking about the sacrifice abroad. Well, what about the people here with the living crisis, for one? Yeah. What about the people here who get energy costs, which are the highest in Europe and amongst the highest in the world because of, frankly, amongst other things, the taxes applied, despite the fact that buffoon who was educated at the same university I was, Ed Miliband, suggesting otherwise. Yeah. This is the problem that we can't get through. It is almost as if for 5 years we are complete and utter buffoons, thickos, racists, whatever you want to call us. But when they need the vote, then they'll show a small degree of humanity and empathy, and then it's the same circle. Now, in fairness, there are a few exceptions to that rule, but by and large, that's the way that it's perceived. So when you get people like Trump or Farage or whoever who will say the things that these PC-laden politicians don't want to hear, whether it's about immigration, whether it's about the cost of living, whether it's about net zero or whatever, who smash their previous uniparty type ideas and ideology and theology, and I'm going to call it theology, they can't handle it. Yeah. And you only need to see, for example, what Labour were up to in the upcoming days to the election. By the way, I'm not even a Reform voter. I'm not even sure I could vote for Reform, but nevertheless, they were deliberately putting out mendacious claims such as Farage is going to start privatising the NHS, the typical sort of things, the racist, etc. And the thing is, and with all due respect to America, we are not the American electorate. We're not going to fall for that sort of rubbish. And why I agree with you about it being totemic is the 16th safest seat in the country in terms of for Labour.
Yes, yeah. I mean, this was not that makes it all the more significant. This was not one of those seats where Labour go, well, we never won here anyway. This was right up there in their top 20.
Well, this is the point, and bear in mind, it went from 15,000 lead that the previous incumbent had before he decided to exhibit his martial arts skills on the streets to being overturned. But this is the key, and why I think it's potentially damaging for all the parties, and it's going to shake them up, is as follows. Previously, the Liberal Democrats, especially after 2010, but for most of the 20th century, were the protest party, be it by-elections, be it in elections. If the Conservatives were feeling a bit lefty or Labour were feeling a bit, Labour supporters feeling a bit indifferent, you went to Lib Dems, you sent a message. But the difference is, and why it's potentially so scary for both parties, because you'd expect ideologically that Reform would take votes off the Tories, and we saw, with the mayor in Great Lincolnshire, I forget her name. It's
Andrea Jenkins.
Jenkins, that's the one. You saw with that, obviously, that's the obvious thing. But the fact that they overturned Runcorn, they will also snatch voters, not just from Labour, but from the very heartland. Yeah. That is why both parties are going to have to, in their manifestos and going forward, get their fingers out and think, what do we actually stand for? It's not going to be sufficient simply to say we're not the Tories, we're not Labour. And in particular for the Tories, ironically, their greatest strength over the last 200 years has been their pragmatism, the fact that they haven't been weighed down by any sort of dogma. But ironically now, if they shift to the left and go too much towards the Liberals in the way that Cameron wanted, then they'll leave the whole of the right open. If they shift towards the right, well, then Labour and Liberals can attack them and say, well, the Tories have gone too far right. So it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. But ultimately, I'll finish on this point. The reality of the situation is it's offering a greater voice to people. Now, at the end of the day, that can't be a bad thing. The irony, of course, Ian, being that the very people who, in the aftermath of June 16, were telling us about democracy and choice and everything else, are now amongst the very people who are going to say, yeah, you're allowed to have choice, but only the choice that we want to give you. And unfortunately, the electorate have said, in the words of Winston Churchill, two fingers to you, we want the choice that we want, and if you can't provide it, we will vote for those who can.
Yeah, that's a powerful point as ever, Paz. Do you sense, though, that political appetites have changed? I mean, and that might sound like an obvious question, but we keep talking about this governing from the centre, or more or less from the centre, and the Tories and Labour have dined out for years, and it probably worked quite well for years. But things that people are concerned about do shift. We never thought we'd be debating what a woman was half an hour ago, and yet here we are. We never thought we'd be discussing the fact that your nan has to have a windmill on her head to save the planet. We didn't think we'd be doing this kind of stuff. We didn't think we'd be discussing 11,000 people in 16 weeks crossing a channel on boats. So all of this stuff is seismic, was never there before. So I wonder whether we've shifted the parameters of where this sort of fictitious centre actually is.
Well, we have, but don't forget that as Change UK and others showed, the centre is something you need to have supporting you, but you never want to be centrist. Our history shows that we're a centre-right electorate. Whatever anybody said, this is why the Conservatives have been so successful. But the biggest thing as well, Ian, which I think is something which is often missed, is Farage, whether you like him or not, and I've got mixed ideas about him. I've never met the man personally, but he's got a bit of personality. He's a very skilled orator. Whatever anybody says, not his content in the same way there were others before him, but he's way ahead of most other politicians in terms of oratory. Yeah. And being a personality, let's be honest, in the world at the moment, if you're a politician with a bit of personality, people immediately want to denigrate you and say, hard man, authoritarian. They'll live on that. This is the problem. What these folks don't realise, they use that as a mantra to actually garner more support because people are allured to that, whether it's Trump, whether it's Farage, whether it's Modi. Look at them. And this is why I think it will be a seismic shift. And I think what is been very telling, Ian, is the way that Labour, not just now, but over the last few months, and a lot of the left have been targeting reform. If you look at it in terms of, politics, they've got 400-odd seats in the Commons. Why would they be worrying about a party with 5? Because they're not stupid. They see what's on the horizon, and they see they have to up their game, or else they will be in a very similar position to where the Conservatives are at the moment.
Indeed. Pav, thank you, as ever. Pav in Harrow. Very fluent, passionate stuff from him. There will have to be some kind of arrangement, though, won't there, between the Tories and Reform? I know today might not be the day to discuss that, but I'm thinking ahead, if you wanted to retain a party that was centre-right, you would probably, even as good as the numbers are, as impressive as those overturnings and those seismic wins for Reform are, based on everything, crunching the numbers, would Reform become the government if there was an election tomorrow? Probably not. Remember, Labour did still win stuff. They've still got a couple of significant mayoralties. So, big day for Reform. Is it enough? And could they do it solo without the help of the Tories? And thank you to Debbie, who says, oh my God, what a day. Reform winning local elections. Mr. Markle, as in Prince Harry, being told no. Next, you'll have breaking news that a migrant has been denied asylum. Oh, that's just stupid, Debbie. Don't go that far. 0344 499 1000. Just gone 2:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Here says, I have solar panels on my roof and certainly don't get free electricity. I haven't seen any benefits from them in 10 years. We did take a lot of calls yesterday from people who'd done it, not because they were signed up to Ed Miliband's curious evangelistic agenda, but just because they put them on there to see if it works. And they get there pretty much, hardly pay anything in bills. and can charge the old car as well because they've got an EV. So that's one angle to come at it from. I don't think people mind that. If you want to do it, you can do it. Not every house could take it, but great if you can. It's the almost cult-like nature of Mr. Miliband now teaming up with Angela Rayner to go full pelt on heat pumps as well. Man alive. I mean, what a duo. Imagine being out having a coffee with that pair. Also this story, 25 to 3. Harrods has become the third major retailer in a week to be hit by a cyber attack after Marks & Spencer's and the Co-op. The luxury store has restricted internet access while IT teams deal with the threat. There are growing fears that Britain's high streets are being targeted in a coordinated campaign. Let's speak with Ruth Edwards, cybersecurity expert, who just happens to be a former Conservative MP as well. But on this specific point, Ruth, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I mean, these are big attacks, right? These are not like, you know, a kid in a room messing around trying to see if he can get into his friend's Instagram account. This is big, and it seems to be particularly organised.
Yeah, that's quite right, Ian. It's you know, we're looking at serious criminal groups here. We obviously don't know if the attacks are linked. Obviously, the fact that it's all retailers that have been targeted in the very close time frame suggests that they are potentially coordinated. Or it might be, for example, that they are using a common piece of software. So it might be a supply chain attack. But so there are several possibilities. We don't know yet which one of those it is. We've got very little information about the actual attacks. But yes, certainly serious criminality and serious attacks, which will cost the victim stores considerable amounts of money.
Indeed, and you know, we often hear, and I don't know if it's fully confirmed, but we often hear of ransom demands on these things. That there was a talk that M&S had been, you know, requested to part with money on this. I would assume they tend not to, and if they did, perhaps we never hear about it. But nonetheless, that would suggest that there's something pretty big, industrial scale, if you like, in terms of the organisation behind this.
Yes, that's right. I mean, it hasn't been formally attributed yet, so we can't say for sure it's this group or it's that group. There are obviously rumours that have been quite widely reported in the press that it's the hacking network Scattered Spider. And they have got a sort of quite a well-known MO using social engineering to carry out sort of ransomware attacks or extortion attacks, where they get hold of a company's data and they threaten to release it unless the company pays them a sum of money. Some companies do pay. So quite famously, back in 2023, this particular group hacked some of the very big US casinos, including Caesars, and Caesars actually paid them $15 million to try and avoid having to shut down its systems.
Wow. I mean, so what do we take from that cyber hacking at this level works?
Well, it's certainly a lucrative business. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen the huge growth, I think, in the sort of criminal economy. I mean, you've got groups now who are selling their ransomware software. So they say, well, you know, you can use our, almost like a franchise in a way. You can use our software if we get 20%, for example, of, you know, the ransom demand that you get out of the company who you've targeted. So yes, there's a huge sort of criminal economy growing up around it.
And it's, you know, I've heard many people say, look, you know, that the whole world of hacking, both in terms of warfare as well as individuals or groups that want to make a few quid on the side, or more than a few quid, but in terms of how this could be the new battlefield for countries. You know, we know that, you know, there's been, you know, over the years, you know, suggestions that systems, whether it's health, whether it's education, not just here but other places, have been certainly suspicion that there could be or might be some kind of attack on the way, or somebody has tried to do something. I heard somebody the other day say, we haven't even started on this journey yet, because this absolutely will become the terrain where international battles are fought. Is that reasonable, or is that a hyperbole?
I would agree agree with that, actually, because if you think about it, society is increasingly reliant on digital networks, whether that's for energy, whether that's, just for communication. We've seen, with certain attacks in the past, we've seen huge impact on the NHS's ability to function and carry out operations, for example. So I think you can inflict an awful lot of damage for the relatively low cost of a sophisticated cyber attack like that. We also, of course, have to factor in what new technologies like artificial intelligence are going to do. So they're going to enable attackers to carry out attacks at a far greater pace and volume and sophistication than they can do without it. It's already being used, for example, to create more effective, more convincing phishing attacks on a huge scale. So I think it is going to be an increasingly big challenge in the years to come.
I'm bound to ask you this while you're on with us. You worked in cybersecurity for many years, then you took a little bit of a respite, and if you want to take your foot off the gas and have an easy life, become a Conservative MP. So you did that for 5 years, and you worked very diligently in government. I happen to know that. How do you feel today? Are you glad you are no longer a Conservative MP? Because they've been given a little bit of a kicking, along with others, at the local elections last night. What's your response?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a sad and a pretty bleak day, I think, for anybody who is a Conservative. I'm enjoying what I'm doing now with my career, but I love being a member of Parliament, and I was sad to lose my seat, but that is what happened. And there'll be lots of Conservative councillors who have been working very hard, who, it's not an individual judgment against them, but like many of us, you fall prey to the popularity of your party. And I think it's fair to say, the Conservative Party has a lot of work to do to rebuild trust with the electorate. I think it's also fair to say that the Labour Party has done a lot to lose the electorate's trust since the general election. I think both major parties will have some really serious issues to reflect on at the moment as we see the rise of the smaller parties, particularly Reform, really benefiting in these local elections.
Indeed. Do you think the Conservatives need to think hard about changing their leader?
I don't think it would be fair to say that at this stage. I mean, we almost suffered an extinction level event at the last general election. That was less than a year ago. And I think expecting Kemi or anybody else to turn it round so that we had a really positive story from local elections held less than a year later would be an ask too far, really. Kemi's been very clear that we need to, take a step back, reset the ground. And only then really can we sort of expect to start even getting a fair hearing with people again. And I think that's going to take time, and we just have to accept that.
Yeah, we will see. We are a few years away from a general election, of course. Lots could happen. Ruth, thank you for your time as ever. Really appreciate that. Ruth Edwards, who's a cybersecurity expert, but she was for 5 years up until last year a Conservative MP. I think she was also the Assistant Deputy Chief Assistant Government Whip as well. She held some positions. Her assessment of what went wrong there, and it just gets worse really for the mainstream parties. Reform has won control of its first county council election, first county councils in this historic day for Mr Farage's party. We heard about Staffordshire. We can now confirm Lincolnshire and Durham councils. They have full control of those three. Could there be more to come? I mean, that is huge in itself. That's big news. They're not talking about a few parish councillors here and there. They're talking about controlling the entirety of some big regions and areas. They have a mayoralship. Dame Andrea Jenkins won Greater Lincolnshire. She's now the mayor over there, beating her nearest rival by almost 40,000 votes. I mean, there wasn't any doubt on this one, goodness me. And of course, as we also know, Sarah Pochin became the new MP for Runcorn and Helsby in the by-election, overturning a 15,000 majority, which is what the previous Labour incumbent, Karen Shaw, was sitting on. So that's how it's looking at the moment. But yeah, sorry, I should say Karen Shaw was the rival. The previous incumbent, of course, was a fellow that had to walk the plank because he punched a constituency in the face multiple times. So that's how it looks so far. Your response to that, Nigel Farage says we're now the official opposition to Labour. Do you agree with that? Do you concur? Elaine is in Loughborough. Elaine, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. What
the
are your
last
thoughts?
time I called you, I was in Cape Cod, and Donald Trump had just won the election. Yeah, he was. He wasn't elected, but he just won the election. And I talked to you about the enthusiasm of the country and how much it needed it. And when I came back off that vacation, I was like so doom and gloomy because we've got no enthusiasm, and I feel like we've got it back. And to top it all for me, I am a greengrocer and I have a shop and it's called Forage. And on Monday, Forage's team came into town in Loughborough and he came into my store.
Nice.
And we had a wonderful discussion.
Yep.
He was charismatic. He listened. I'd got a boy on his first day of volunteering because he has learning difficulties. He took time. He told him about his first day at work. I didn't mention immigration. I didn't mention the NHS. I went for things that matter on the street, getting shops back, bringing business rates down, electricity bills down, just trying. We run our shop in the dark, a bit like Dan the Noir, the restaurant in Nottingham, just to conserve energy. And we've looked at a different way. But I really, really, really think we need that enthusiasm.
Sure.
We need somebody with some passion. I don't agree on all his stuff because obviously I deal with Europe a lot and I need stuff from abroad, and clearly we pay a bigger price because we're out of Europe. But it's about the person, as with Donald Trump, who does what he says he's going to do and bring it to the table. And that is really just my ethos. I think it was a good day. I stayed up and watched it in. When did you ever watch in a
local election? Yeah, indeed. There you go. You see, there is something. Listen.
Yeah, I mean, but thanks for chatting again. I just had to, it was too synonymous to miss the day because I spoke to you on another poignant day, I think, in politics. And
there it is. Well, you've done it again. We'll have to wait for the third one now, Elaine, see when that will be. The third poignant day. That's Elaine in Loughborough. Thank you to her. Had a little bit of a tete-a-tete with Nigel Farage on the campaign trail. Thank you to her. 0344 499 1000. We are going to cross as well to the courts over there in London, find out what that result means for Prince Harry. He's lost that appeal about security. Details on the way, and the voice of doom coming next as well. This is Talk.
can't claim to be the party of low tax when the Conservative government put up taxes higher than they'd ever been since the Second World War. And you can't claim to be the party
Well, we
of
did out of
controlling...
necessity.
Well,
Look,
but the fact is you did it. It doesn't matter.
I think this is key because, I know we had to do it because we spent £400 billion on the pandemic.
Yeah, but you can't claim to be...
As soon as we could start reducing taxes, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, no, I get that. But Nigel, you can't claim to be the party of lower taxes if you're putting them up to the highest level they've ever been at.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It is 10 to 3 on Talk. That breaking news in the last 30 minutes or so. Prince Harry has lost his legal challenge over the level of security he receives while in the UK. We can cross now to the Court of Appeal there and speak to Julia Atherley, Home Affairs correspondent at The Sun, who's been following this ruling. Julia, good afternoon to you. Tell us what's been happening.
Yeah, so do you remember Prince Harry made the decision in February 2020 to step back as a working royal? Initially they moved to Canada, obviously now they're in California. At that point his security was downgraded, so he doesn't get the full-time security that he would get if he was a full-time working royal, the same as his brother Prince William or indeed the King. Prince Harry then challenged that decision. So in effect now, his security is decided on a case-by-case basis when he's now in the UK, because obviously he's mainly now living in California. So Harry challenged that decision, made a judicial review, which was then rejected. He then appealed against that decision. It's now come to the Court of Appeal. Last month, Prince Harry was here for 2 days for the hearing. He was here in person. And his lawyers argued that there should be a human dimension to this case, and that's why he should have his security. His lawyer gave a very impassioned speech about how his life was at stake, and he no longer feels safe when he comes to the UK. This is the judgment which has just come back in this case. And today, the Master of Rolls, Geoffrey Voss, has said that while it was important to highlight that human dimension, and it was very powerful and moving to hear how Prince Harry has been affected by this, that in effect does not translate to a legal argument. In effect, that doesn't make any difference to the situation with his security. He said that today that the security arrangements are in fact quite sensible, and deciding on a case-by-case basis makes sense. So today in his judgment, he's dismissed Prince Harry's appeal.
And Julia, have we had any response from the Prince so far?
Nothing yet. What could happen next? He could choose to appeal to the Supreme Court. To do that, he'd have to ask for permission to appeal, and he'd have to prove that this case has some sort of legal precedent to set. So his the argument in this case will be legally important for, the law of the UK. But we've not heard anything yet, and we don't know whether he is planning to appeal to that higher court.
We will certainly watch with interest. Julia, thank you. Julia Atherley, Home Affairs correspondent at The Sun, who's been covering that case, that Court of Appeal ruling, the legal challenge Prince Harry has lost over the level of security he receives while in the UK. And The Sun will continue to cover all the elements of that story. We'll bring you all the breaking news here as well. And I think as a kind of encapsulating final headline, many people have said, well, if you leg it for the hills from the royal family, you might just lose some of what goes with the gig, like, I don't know, royal protection 24/7. Any breaking news on that, we'll bring it to you here first on Talk. It's coming up on 5 to 3. Now, the voice of doom, day one, yes. It went yesterday after 21 days. The voice of doom was won. The answer was Stephen Byers, former Blairite government minister. He was Transport Secretary, Chief Secretary of the Treasury, I think, for a bit. He had a lot of roles over there, did Byers, back in the day. It went on for 21 days, which means we have a brand new voice today. Let's have a listen.
This is so interesting.
Oh, dear, that's a killer, right? I sense another 21 days coming on. Let's have another listen.
This is so interesting.
Now, remember, you don't have to phone in on this. Just message in if you fancy taking part, because there ain't a prize or anything. 87222 is the number. If we get a right answer, we reveal all after the headlines at 3. If we don't, it rolls over to, well, it's a bank holiday, to Tuesday. Here's the voice again.
This is so interesting.
Who is that? 87222, if you think you know. Chris is in Epsom. How you doing, Chris?
Hi, Ian. How are you, mate?
I'm good as gold. Yeah, what's going on? What are your thoughts?
I'm smiling from ear to ear. The sun's out and the Muppets are squirming.
That's a great phrase.
Yeah, this morning, you know, I get up, I start very early in the morning, so I always put Mike on in the morning. I watched him from 6 to 6:30, and then I had to have a spin around the legacy media to see what they were doing, and it was like a comedy show. I said, they were tripping over their tongues. They just couldn't take on board.
Well, there has to be a reason for it, surely. You know, this is a protest vote, surely.
Even one of them, and I had to rewind it on BBC, even one of them, when he was describing what had happened, and he was a reporter, and he said, "We the Labour Party."
We the Labour Party? What a beauty. Who'd have thought at the BBC that might happen? I mean, they talk about Freudian slips, but I think that might just be a genuine case of one.
Yes, I think it was, and I'll send it to you.
We the Labour... I love that.
The thing is, this is not an overnight success. This is a slow burn of the country.
100%.
This has started, in my belief, it started after the financial crash of 2008. Brexit was another show that we were going that way, and it's been going along in that route. And I think that's what's happened. It's not an overnight success. The country has learned. I mean, you had the Tory MP Huddleston on, and he was saying all great things to Mike and that about what they've done. And that. They let 900,000 in the last year of their office.
They have literally no room to, or no right to opine on the current failures of immigration. They not just oversaw it, they ignored it.
Absolutely. I'll tell you something else, and this you might find a bit wild. Blair's statement against net zero the other day, perfectly timed before the elections.
Yep.
I think he's on manoeuvres. I think he wants back in. I think he wants the leadership of the Labour Party again. I think he's going to try and convince...
I think you posted that point, didn't you?
Yes, I did, yeah.
I saw that as well, and I thought, hang on a sec, because I hadn't thought about this before. So, you know, like 6:30 in the morning, you challenged my head while I'm chomping on my brioche. And I was thinking about it, I thought, Blair is so vain, it's just possible. But does he want the hassle? The man can't go to his own book signing without 10 million security guards these days.
Well, everything else has failed. He failed to get the presidency of Europe.
Yep.
The WEF has collapsed now. Schwartz is under investigation for defrauding millions out of the WEF. So that globalist policy's gone. So what's he got left as in power?
Prime Minister.
All he's got left is to call back on the Blairites and try and get back in power.
He'd have to become an MP again as well, wouldn't he? I mean, would he really, this man that travels the world as an international statesman, does he want that old tribe? We will watch with interest. A great suggestion, though, Chris. Thank you. I've got to move because the news is upon us. That is Chris in Epsom talking some sound common sense. What do you think about the Blair thing? Is he on manoeuvres? Is that what Blair's doing, getting his way back in? I haven't finished here. Well, you know, that. Could it be? Yeah, really? TB back in number 10? Surely not. We'll have more from you in a few moments. 03444991000. We've got a great crime feature coming up as well. Stand by for that. And the voice of doom. Who is this?
This is so interesting.
If you think you know, 87222. We will tell you if we get a right answer after the news, which is next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the home of Common Sense. Man alive, we are absolutely crammed to the rafters at this, and there's so much news around, particularly this Reform UK story. Nigel Farage claiming to be the official opposition to Labour after they won the Runcorn Helsby by-election. Sarah Pochin is now the new Reform MP for that constituency and becomes the fifth over there on the Reform benches in the House of Commons. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage's party has taken control of its first county councils. These are landmark results. They've got majorities in Staffordshire, Lincolnshire and Durham. Absolutely massive. They've secured over 300 seats nationwide. Meanwhile, the Tories and Labour are weeping in the corner at being given not so much a bit of a kicking, but an absolute flipping pasting. I'm telling you now, Eubank Jr. couldn't have done a better job. And Prince Harry has lost his legal challenge over the levels of security he receives while he's in the UK. I mean, he gave it a go, but he's lost. That's the latest. Yet to hear from California to see what's happening over there with the Merkels. Maybe we'll get a response here this afternoon. If we do, we'll bring it to you right here on the programme. And I mentioned a second ago, we're going to be talking crime a little later. We've got a couple of guests talking crime, and there's a good reason for that, and that's because there is a rather big event going on called CrimeCon. And these things happen around the world. There's one, in fact, there's two happening in the UK. We'll speak to the founder of CrimeCon and also a former senior investigating officer from the Met Police, Colin Sutton, who has investigated and dealt with some of the most extraordinary, grisly cases you can imagine. Stand by for that as well. We'll go back to your calls and comments in a few moments. We've also got, of course, the voice of doom. It was day one, a brand new voice. Have a listen to it. If you didn't hear the voice before the news, here it is.
This is so interesting.
Who is that? The last voice went on for 21 days before somebody finally won it, after a few clues, I should say. But not actually, they weren't giveaway clues. They were good clues, but yeah, somebody nicked it yesterday. So this is the new one. Here it is again.
This is so interesting.
These are some of the guesses. Matt Hancock. Yeah, God, it does sound like Matt Hancock, doesn't it? I didn't think that at first. It really did. Can we hear it again, Dave?
This is so interesting.
Yeah, that could be Matt Hancock. Dave, you sure you didn't mess this up? He's got the Matt Hancock clip. Definitely not, he tells us. It's not Matt Hancock. Stuart Andrew, no. Robert Jenrick, no. Jeffrey Archer, it is not. William Hague, no. John Regwood, no. Philip Hammond, no. Michael Gove, no. But Stephen Kinnock, no. We haven't got a winner. It's another rollover, kids. Will this one go on for 21 days? Who knows? It's back on Tuesday. We're off for the weekend. It's bank holiday, of course. So Tuesday, the Voice of Doom returns for day 2. And also this story, refugee households claimed over £1.1 billion in benefits last year. That's a 33% rise, driven by more asylum seekers being granted refugee status and a record number crossing the channel. This comes, of course, as Reform UK's first mayor has called for migrants to be housed in tents instead of hotels. This is Dame Andrea Jenkins, newly elected mayor of Greater Lincolnshire, made the comments in her victory speech, calling for an end to a soft touch. Let's speak to Dr. Mike Jones, political scientist and migration expert. Mike, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good to be here.
Always good to have you with us. Let's pick up on the Jenkins comment there. The end to a soft touch. Is that what's created this? A perpetual, ongoing, over many years soft touch, which is why we can read headlines which include the term 1.1 billion.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not just a soft touch, we're a punching bag. And you've got to remember, this is the first time that the bill for migration welfare for households with one refugee has surpassed 1 billion. You know, in 2023, it was 828 million. So that's a substantial increase. And, you know, this surge in money being spent is due to the number of asylum seekers being granted refugee status. I mean, to put this into context, in the mid-noughties, you had around 5 to 6,000 people being granted asylum every year. Now, fast forward to 2023, that number is about 67,000 people. And last year it was 47,000.
Wow.
So you can see the immense pressures being put on the welfare state, on the British taxpayer, and on immigration officers. And, we've gone past breaking points, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, and we are talking about money. I mean, this didn't have to happen. I mean, ultimately, it really didn't have to happen. We hear Labour talk about a £22 billion black hole. 7% of that black hole is on that one figure, or that, the context of it. 1.1 billion is not an insignificant amount of money, of course, here, Mike. I mean, this is massive. There's many government departments out there, many old people who quite like their winter fuel allowance back, that would say, isn't it interesting where this government prioritises?
Well, it's not an insignificant number. It's not just a sunk cost. You're not going to, we can't get that money back.
Yeah.
It's also an opportunity cost, because we could have spent that money on, infrastructure, public services, and so on and so forth. But the situation is only going to get worse, and we're going to be doling out more money. I mean, look at the numbers who have arrived this week. 173 on Monday, 422 on Tuesday, and nearly 300 on Wednesday. I mean, the numbers who have arrived illegally this year across the Channel is now more than 11,000. And, it took up until June last year to reach that number. So, unfortunately, the British taxpayer is going to be punished for the foreseeable future.
And this is an ongoing bill, as you allude to there, Mike. I mean, it's not like, this is the bill for this year, but we'll work on it for next year. This is going to continue, and based on trends, will get worse.
Yeah, based on trends, this is set to be a record-breaking year. I mean, the high point was 2022, where we had around 45,000 illegal migrants cross the Channel, and that was due to the number of Albanians paying the people smugglers. But, on current trends, we're looking at about 50,000 people, possibly more. I mean, at this moment in time, the weather has more control over illegal immigration than the Home Office. And that's a completely unacceptable state of affairs. I mean, it's completely unacceptable. The Home Office is a Potemkin institution. It's completely fake. All the power lies with the human rights lawyers and the judges who make the really big decisions on this. And this is why we have the Channel migrant crisis.
Yeah, and until there is somebody in power, and I don't say this as a point just to echo Andrea Jenkin or the successes of reform, but it's only going to change when there is a genuine political appetite to change it.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a thicket of human rights laws that prevent the state from taking responsibility to actually detain and deport these people. I mean, the asylum system has been de-democratized. Politicians promise one thing, the public demand tighter restrictions, but when that government is in office, all of the power lies with the courts and the lawyers. Yeah. It's been completely de-democratized. There needs to be a sea change in how we run the asylum system, and that's only going to come about when there's a sea change in the ideologies of the major political parties, and obviously Reform UK are changing things and completely reshaping the landscape. So it'll be interesting to see how both the Labour and the Conservative parties respond to this.
Yeah, well, I can take a guess. I don't imagine it'll be anything that most people agree with. Mike, always great to get your view on these things. Mike Jones, Dr. Mike Jones, a political scientist and migration expert, speaks from a hugely qualified perspective. And I think Mike will be the first to concede it shouldn't need a political scientist to work this one out. I mean, I think a 10-year-old could say, well, that doesn't seem quite right. There's something wrong here. We are not any longer engaged in helping people from despotic regimes to a place of safety. We're involved in a criminal cartel of trafficking people at huge expense to the British taxpayer, and then doing absolutely nothing, even when faced with several opportunities to deal with it. It will just get worse and worse. And until you... How many more messages would the government and the opposition, the Conservatives, have to receive after last night and those results? How much more of that does there need to be before people start to put their hand up and go, do you know, this is absolutely bonkers. 11,000 people. We're not even counting legal migration. We're also not counting people who just happen to get in here through other means that we don't even know about. And I'm sure if you can nip across the channel on a boat and get assistance when you arrive here, a nice warm blanket, a cup of Horlicks, and off you go to some form of safe accommodation. There's got to be people who just go, do you know what we'll do? We'll just do it further down the channel where nobody will see us and we'll disappear into the grey economy. It's absolutely massive. This is absolutely massive. Will reform sort it out? They say they will. Some argue Nigel Farage was more honest in his last assessment of this when he said, well, you can't just deport everybody. Rupert Lowe, previous Reform MP, still an MP but an independent, thinks you can. Let's go back to your calls on what happened over the last 24 hours or so. Those elections, people voting in local elections, mayoral, by-election, council elections. Let's get a call in from Ian in London. Ian, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. We speak again.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
For me, what am I thinking? My worst nightmare is beginning to come about. And it's not that I've felt for years now that this country is going to end up like an Italy, where you're going to have like small parties having to combine to get into power. Because quite simply, what you showed by last night, I'm not too sure on this, but bear with me, where reform got in, okay, but they got in, whatever, there isn't the ethnic minorities in that area that there are in the major cities. The major cities are always going to be Labour strongholds, right? The only difference, I think, which will become about is that more of those ethnic minorities and those things will appoint their own MP, like they have with these lunatics with the Gaza MPs, right? And that will sort of do. And all it's going to do is it's going to break up all the majority part. All these days of either having a Labour government with a majority or a Conservative, they're long gone. They're long gone. It will now break down because there is no way, whatever reform do, that they're going to have like some of these ethnic minorities voting for them. That will never happen.
So there are large chunks, metropolitan areas that they're going to have to pretty much ignore, even if they do sort of widen their net for a kind of a chunkier appeal. It's never going to go as far as those areas.
No, and the other side, the flip side of the coin, was when it came about with there was this whole thing that when Tony Blair opened the doors for Europeans to come into the country, it was to suddenly try and alter the voting patterns, because it was always going to be that the Conservatives would always get in because there was always more white Conservatives in this country than there were from the other minorities. And that was, but here it's done the reverse, and it is going to become an absolute nightmare. That's my opinion on it. I don't know.
But could there be? I mean, you're absolutely right, because I know that if you just look at a few headlines, then you'd be forgiven for going, well, reform's going to be the government tomorrow. But of course, the mountain they've got to climb, which I think you acknowledge, sorry, Ian, is that it's actually still a seismic journey for reform.
Yeah, because I don't know, but as far as I worked a couple of years ago in Doncaster, and Doncaster still has got a quite big majority of ethnic minorities there. That's why they've held on to that mayoral for the last 4 times.
Yeah.
Right? But when you go to some of the ones, let's say, in Essex, in Kent and everything else, they haven't got that. Reform are eating into it. And you'll never find, it's like they said with the Conservative Party up until the last election, there was the 2 fractions. There was some that were a little bit more liberal and going that side, and then there were the more right-wing Conservatives. There was the left-wing Conservatives and the right-wing.
Yeah.
That's why they're going to break into 2 again now.
So we've got, at the moment, you've got 464 council seats for reform, and second on the list so far is the Lib Dems, 196.
Yeah.
Tories third, Labour, Independents actually fourth, Labour fifth. That's so far.
Yeah, which will show when it's and I bet you any money, the Labour ones that are there, is it because I don't know how many Metropolitan elections there were last night. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't anything in Birmingham because you had somebody in Birmingham saying there was definitely nothing in London.
No.
So it's the metropolitan cities that would have shown Labour to have been holding on to a degree, maybe lost a few, but holding on to bits.
Yeah.
They don't show up in this election. So people are getting a little bit, oh yeah, Reform are going to do, as you said, Reform are going to do brilliant. No. It's got to be shown if they can take a few seats in major metropolitan areas, then I think they're onto something. But until they can break that sort of barrier, I think it will never happen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. I think you're absolutely right. And I would imagine that Richard Tice and Nigel Farage are painfully aware of this here and are probably trying to work out the best way around it. But they, like a lot of parties, you do have to sort of roll over at some point and go, we're never, ever going to win a seat there.
Well, no, the only way they're going to get it, and this is why they want it, is with, is it electoral representation? Like
proportional representation, yeah.
That's it. That's the one. Sorry.
No.
That's the only way that they would win it, because then they'd hope that if there's 37 million, let's say, voting, and they got 18 million, they're getting the majority of the vote, not just on the seats in each individual area.
That would be that if you could do it that way, then it would work. But
yeah,
there we are. Listen, we'll watch with interest, no doubt about that. Ian, great call. Ian in London, just setting out some fairly hard truths. They're going to be the really tricky areas for Reform. Big metropolitan regions. You can kind of kiss goodbye. I mean, Boris Johnson managed to become a Conservative mayor not once but twice in London. And the reason being is that Boris was a very kind of liberal politician. He's very accessible, all of that. He's very buoyant. He's a great salesman, so he was good for the city, going around the world saying, yeah, come to London, blah, blah, blah. So that's brilliant. But that's very, very rare. I mean, it's a Labour city, as most cities tend to be. How do Reform deal with that? 0344 499 1000. We'll have more from you coming next on Talk.
On paper look like a small margin, but it's a huge win.
Yeah.
I mean, we've won something here in a safe, historic Labour seat, one of their safest seats in the country. And also, if you look at the results in Doncaster, North Tyneside that have come through already, you'll see 26% swings from Labour to Reform. But at the same time, go to Lincolnshire, traditional, safe, solid blue Conservative county, and Andrea Jenkins has won that by a country mile.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 1 in from Nicola in Cwmbran in Wales says, good afternoon. I'd like to see reform in opposition, as the Prime Minister would no longer be able to talk about the 22 billion black hole, as they didn't cause it. It is boring. He can't stop talking about it. He even spoke about it today. It's as if he had a recall button that he pressed if he's not mentioned the 22 billion thing at least 5 times a day. Yes, the pensioner has had over £400 a year increase, £6 a month. Yet bread, eggs, etc. have gone up far more than that. We want answers from him. When Kemi is asked a question, he never replies with criticism of the previous government. He only replies with that. Never answers. It's a very good point. That's exactly what happens, isn't it? He just simply comes up with that. And not unreasonably. So she can't really go too big on channel migrants because he'll just say, well, it was your government. She could... Technically, she can say, well, I wasn't responsible for that. In fact, in government, I didn't even agree with that. So she could say that, and she's starting to do a little bit of that. But it's not straightforward. And there's no way you can sit there in opposition after 14 years and expect the Prime Minister of the day to say anything other than that, frankly. I mean, if you were Keir Starmer's advisors, you'd be telling him, bring up the 22 billion black hole, which is mostly cobblers, by the way. It doesn't really define reality, but they don't stop using it, as Nicola rightly points out. This is Dee in the West Midlands. Dee, how are you doing?
Hi, yeah, I just want to basically say about a lot of the cities that their local councils are not letting them vote.
Yes.
So we didn't get any votes. Luckily, my daughter's, where she lives, they were able to vote, and reforms took over, which is absolutely fantastic. But I've heard from lots of other people that their cities, they haven't been able to vote. Now, the thing my daughter looked up for the reasons, which I don't know, you probably already know it, it's a load of rubbish, basically, bringing it saying they're going to be postponed until 2026.
Yep.
Obviously, that they knew, didn't they? They knew lots of people want them out, and they're trying their best to keep their seats. It's absolutely bloody disgusting. So, yeah, it's basically saying the breakdown of the key reasons why we're postponing votes until May of 26 is reorganisation of the local government in 2-tier areas. The government is supporting the creation of new single-tier councils. Postponing the elections allows these areas more time to plan and implement these significant structural changes without the disruption of an election based on the old council structures. Right. Holding elections for councils that are about to be abolished would be seen as an unnecessary cost and create confusion. Basically, they're running scared, and that's why they didn't want half of the bloody UK or wherever it's voting to vote. And I'm fuming, and loads of people are fuming. Sure, surely it's illegal. They've took our right away to vote. Now, I know they're the government, and yeah, they say what is and what isn't. But it's absolutely disgusting. Another bloody scandal on their part. Absolutely atrocious. I'm fuming. Like I say,
those elections have been postponed, of course, rather than cancelled.
Go through.
Naughty, naughty.
I mean,
no naughty words,
I'm not going to go into details, but Christ almighty.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I know, I can hear it. You're angry, and rightly so.
It's thousands of people. We're sick of it.
Yeah.
And then to say we can't even bloody vote, come on. They're taking the mickey big time.
Yeah.
But I'm just so glad where my daughter lives, and in Runcorn, obviously I've seen that this morning, reforms, and they're taking lots. I've not logged it in, so I haven't checked on lots of it. But my daughter said they're taking loads, Mum. So that's one up for reform. And
well, we will see, and don't hold your breath in terms of getting an election anytime in the next 10 minutes, though, Dee. But thank you, Dee, in the West Midlands. I was just looking at Kent in my neck of the woods. Seats won by parties. This is the Kent County Council election results. Last update on this, Reform have 46 seats, the Lib Dems 12, Conservatives 2. Man alive, I mean, Kent was so blue for so long, and then it did tilt the other way for a little bit. Sort of the Blair era saw some red in there, and then it sort of went back to blue. I know that was more MPs I'm thinking of, but really high pro. You know, Anne Widdecombe was a Kent MP. We probably had, I don't know, 3 or 4 big beast cabinet ministers that were in the county. But anyway, seats 1, council elections, Reform 46, Lib Dems 12, Conservatives 2, Green Party 1, Labour 1. And none of the other parties, Heritage Party, Homeland Party, Socialist Party of Great Britain, Tunbridge Wells Alliance, no seats on any of those. But it was good to see that a mate of mine, Maxine Fothergill, who stood in one of the Sevenoaks constituencies for Reform UK, has won that seat. And I'm delighted for Maxine because she campaigned at the last election, in Sidcup, didn't quite do it, did incredibly well, got herself 10, 11,000 votes. I mean, it was significant stuff. And she's just very good and knows the terrain. So she's got herself on the council. Whatever the bigger headline is of Kent and others, we await to see. 0344 499 1000. This comes in from Ian in Eastleigh, who says the big mistake that Labour are making is that they think that their voters actually have their Labour values. If they changed the rules when voting to state that only a candidate's top 5 policies were listed on the ballot by their name and not the party, Labour would lose 90% of their votes. That's true. I mean, lots of people vote. I mean, there's a whole paper to be written on that, and many have been, of course, on how people vote. They do it by legacy. I mean, if you look at obvious areas, and I always resent this, whether it's Tory or Labour. Diane Abbott is an obvious example in Hackney, Hackney North, where she's been the Labour MP there forever. Nobody in that neck of the woods would ever think about voting anything but Labour. I doubt whether every single person that voted for Diane Abbott is completely and fully engaged in the policies or the finance. It's just what you do. I live in Sevenoaks, and Sevenoaks will always have a Tory MP. It has forever. That never really changes. And they have these thumping majorities. And I always think that's kind of weird in a way, that it works like that. You just, we've always voted Tory, so let's just vote Tory. Don't know the policies, I'll vote for them anyway. That's the bit that's changing. Will it change on a national level? You'll have to wait till 2029, apparently. And Steve says, I feel a reshuffle coming on. You might be right. Watch this space. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk crime in just a couple of moments as well. Reference CrimeCon, the true crime event returning to the capital. Details on that to come. Stand by. It's 3:30. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, just gone 2:30. Let's talk crime. Who doesn't like a bit of crime? True crime, the whole genre, if you like, of true crime in terms of TV, books and events has just gone through the roof over recent years. And in the run-up to the world's #1 true crime event, which is CrimeCon, it's returning to London on June the 7th and 8th. We'll be exploring the minds of criminals and the people who hunt them. There's a lot over the coming weeks to talk about, so much to talk about, from psychology of offenders, forensic breakthroughs and the fight against wrongful convictions. We'll bring you gripping insights from some of the biggest names in true crime. In a moment, we'll speak to a former senior investigating officer, Colin Sutton, was with the Met Police, led over 30 murder investigations, really knows this terrain well and many angles from it. First, we'd be failing not to get a chat with Nancy Bourne, who's the founder of CrimeCon, well versed in this area. Nancy, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, I mean, how did this thing start? Because it's kind of grown and exploded, CrimeCon, over the years. I mean, this is huge, and it's back this year.
It certainly is. And we've run now several events here in the UK, but it actually started back in 2017 in Indianapolis in the States. So it's run from different states, from Vegas to Orlando over there. And we brought it to the UK in September 21. And in 5 weeks' time, we'll be doing our 5th London event. And it's really reflected the appetite for true crime here in the UK.
So firstly, tell us whereabouts in London it is.
It's taking place at 133 Houndsditch near Liverpool Street on the 7th and 8th of June.
OK, and this is, I mean, the agenda. I had a little peek at the website. I'm aware, speaking to our people here, that this is, I mean, you're absolutely rammed with all manner of different types of speakers and things to explore and talk about and debate and listen to.
Yeah, I think, Ian, when you look at true crime as a genre, it's so much more than serial killers and murder recreations. It's a real breadth of diverse content. So we cover everything from topics diverse as domestic violence, fraud, knife crime, stalking, wrongful convictions, the list goes on. And I think the interesting thing for me for CrimeCon, it really reflects what's going on with society at large. So that's exactly where the event kicks in. So we welcome a whole host of industry experts, TV personalities, and also families of victims and survivors of crime sharing their first-hand stories at CrimeCon.
Yeah, it's incredible. And of course, I'm tempted to say things like Netflix, which started years ago. I'll tell you how long it's been going now. It's interesting how people forget. When I mention Making a Murderer to people, some people don't know what I'm talking about. But of course, that was often the thing that got people to subscribe to the likes of Netflix when they realised that that kind of genre had been kind of produced and put together in very sort of I mean, we previously had lots of reenactment kind of programmes, but it's now a whole genre across many networks that specialise in this. So the interest is quite clear for all to see. It's the one that everybody goes to work and talks about. We can talk about all the other sort of dramas that we might love, but when it comes to true crime, Staircase, Making a Murderer, all of that, it's top of the list.
It is, and I think what's interesting, though, it's really seeing a shift as well. So the type of content that's being produced now, it's not macabre and it's not sensationalist. It's having a real shift change in the way it's presented. I think, years ago it used to be a dirty word. I watched true crime, you didn't really share it, but now you're more open to share your fascination with true crime, because I think the whys and the hows are really driven people's motivation for consuming it. But
indeed.
It's a fascinating event, and one that I'm extremely passionate about, and one I'm grateful that the families that trust us with their stories keep returning to CrimeCon year on year. So yes, on to the next one, and that takes place 5 weeks' time here in London.
I'm looking forward to it, 7th and 8th, and I know over the coming weeks we're going to be looking, Nancy, at different speakers that will be there. as you rightly say, I mean, everyone likes a whodunit. I mean, you know, Agatha Christie made that point many years ago. But this is real crime, and of course, it's not just one type of crime. It goes across a whole spectrum of areas, and as you rightly said, even hearing the voices of victims and families of victims.
Yeah, it's important. I know your next guest is a firm favourite of CrimeCon. Now, Colin Sutton has been with us since the very beginning. He comes every year and shares new stories every time. That man's got a breadth of industry, knowledge and expertise. And the calibre of Colin and the other guest speakers we have like 100 guest speakers sharing, and that's from psychology to ex-FBI, all the way through the gamut of true crime. So, yeah, it's captivated me, Ian, I have to tell you. It's completely changed me.
Absolutely. Well, you've got your work cut out between now and then, I'm sure. Never a quiet day in the world of organising an event. I know that much. Listen, Nancy, we'll speak again soon, I hope. Thanks for coming on with us today. Really appreciate that. Nancy Bourne, who is the founder of CrimeCon. You can look up CrimeCon online, down in London, June 7th and 8th. Lots of speakers, lots of people who know this terrain well. Nancy just alluded to Colin Sutton. Let's speak with him now. Former senior investigating officer with the Met Police, led over 30 murder investigations from 2003 to 2011, notably cases like Levi Belfield investigation, the re-investigation of Delroy Grant, the Night Stalker. Big experience in high-profile criminality and a respected figure in law enforcement. There you go, Colin. You couldn't get that on a business card, all of that, could you? Good afternoon.
Who wrote that, Ian? Yeah.
Indeed. Listen, well, I mean, you have got you have to be a certain kind of person, don't you, to go into this world? And, you know, I mentioned a couple of very high-profile cases. Levi Belfield would be about as well-known as it gets in that respect. I mean, this is pretty grim, dark stuff. You've got to have a very thick skin and a certain kind of mind as an investigator to take on those kind of cases, to look at evidence of those kind of cases.
Yeah, you do, but I guess the whole reason that, you know, I'm sitting here now and I've got into this true crime scene is that I started off wanting to highlight the fact that we shouldn't concentrate on these perpetrators and the darkness and the macabreness of it. We should actually look at the stories behind them and the stories of the families that are left behind, but also, from my point of view, the stories of the investigators, because these are you know, ordinary people doing an extraordinary job is the sort of hackneyed phrase, but they really are. And when we did the Belfield investigation, the team that I had the honour of my life to lead did such a magnificent job in bringing him to justice over 3.5 years. I realised that that was going to be lost to history unless somebody wrote it down. So I wrote it down, and here we are now. And what Nancy was saying there, and you were saying about the focus, there has been a shift, and I like to think, you know, I had a part in that, because when I was offered the chance to make a series for Sky about murder and about crimes, I stipulated that I wanted it to focus on victims and focus on investigations and not on the perpetrators. And we've stuck to that now over 4 seasons and hopefully a 5th one soon. And it's moved the dial because other people are walking the same walk now and realise that it's the way to do this is not in a tabloid and sensationalist way, but it's to look at the effects that these things have on the community, but also on the people who are charged with investigating them.
Yeah, absolutely, and a diligent team. And I guess, you know, with investigations, day one of an investigation, Colin, I mean, you know that term, we have a blank sheet of paper. I mean, often that is literally it, right? I mean, you have a murder scene, you have a crime scene. It might be bloody, it might be gruesome, and clearly forensics can gather evidence. But there you are in an office with your colleagues. You haven't got a clue who did this. You've got to put the pieces together, and putting it together is really not the work of a moment, right? I mean, you can luck in once in a while, you know, CCTV, there he is, we know the address, bang. But very rarely does it work out like that.
No, very, very, very rarely does it at all. But, you know, I'll just pick you up on one thing, though. I used to spend as little time in the office as I possibly could.
Well, that's a fair point. But you take my point, though, Colin.
Yeah, I like to be out there with them and with my team and you know, making sure they can do the best possible job. But yeah, it's, you know, people might be surprised to know this. There's actually a murder manual. It's somewhere online. You can read it. It was, you know, formulated years ago for police officers investigating murders, and that kind of takes you through step by step of all the things you can do and can't do and might want to do. The only trouble is, of course, if you try to do that, start on page 1 and work your way through to page 500, you're going to get bogged down. And part of the trick of it is knowing which things you don't do and you don't need to do in these cases, so you can get there more quickly. But yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating field to work in, and it's one that I landed in accidentally almost and just loved and stayed in it for, you know, a third of my entire 30-year service.
Yeah. So what's the... I suppose it differs from crime to crime, but is there a sort of, you mentioned the kind of murder rule book, as it were, but is there a, you obviously have to establish, you know, details of the victim, and that may well lead you to the perpetrator, of course. Sometimes it might not. This could be random. I'm sure very seldom random in that sense, but it could be. What's the first port of call when there's a crime scene, something horrendous has happened? Where do you go first, day one?
You find out who the person is. There's no doubt you should tell me how they lived and I'll tell you how they died. You know, you see what most people who have murdered know their assailant.
Yeah.
And it happens because of circumstances around their life. And sometimes those can be, you know, tragic circumstances. Sometimes they can be unfortunate circumstances or just, you know, domestic relationships, things like that. But see how they lived their life, see what their connections were, who their connections were. And you start to think, well, you know, how might they have been wanted dead? Who might have killed them? Who might have wanted to kill them? And most murders aren't planned. Most murders are kind of spontaneous and arise out of other circumstances. So if you can establish those circumstances, then you've got a good start as to where you go looking. But there are some people, Levi Belfield was one of them, who they kill without much contact. You know, we had no real forensic evidence, no DNA, no blood, no fingerprints, no glass fragments, none of that in his case, because the contact, they were what were known as blitz attacks, and they were just attacks that happened so quickly. And there was no previous connection between him and his victims, because the women that he killed and the women that he attacked were largely women that he'd approached in the streets to see if they would like to go with him for a good time. So they are the more difficult ones to solve, because you've not got that relationship or that background and context of how it's happened that can lead you there. But, you know, we put an awful lot of resources and awful lot of really experienced and highly trained police officers and techniques and science into murder investigations. Thankfully, you know, it's perhaps the one area of crime where the response is still commensurate with the severity of the crime.
Yeah.
And you know, we still solve more than 80% of homicides in England and Wales, which is far and away better than any performance against any other type of crime.
Where does that sit us globally in terms of crime solving? I mean, I would imagine, you know, we've got a good historic pedigree in fighting crime, whether it's the real work of, you know, John Peel onwards, or whether it's the fictitious work of Sherlock Holmes. But nonetheless, you know, we're kind of up there. We're noted as, you know, a force in crime fighting, and we have some of the best forensic and policing brains on the planet. Is there an ugly league table? It might be, but is there? Where are we in this country in terms of successes?
Oh, I would say in terms of, I don't know. I would say I don't know the answer, but I would be very surprised if there was any other kind of large industrialized nation that has any kind of record of success in solving homicides that's comparable to ours. Yeah. You know, if you look across the Atlantic, and the scale of murder there, sadly, is far way and beyond what we see here. You know, even a city like London gets around 130 murders a year, something like that now. I don't think it's ever been up as high as 200. I think it's, you know, plateaued at about 180 and then started dropping. You know, one kind of city in the States can have that in the year, and so they look upon murder investigation in a very different way, and it's done by, you know, a couple of people, whereas you over here still you'll have a team of 30 or so that are thrown at each murder, and that makes a difference. You know, if you've got these these experienced and highly trained resources with all that backup of science and money, then you're going to have success.
Indeed. Well, you are back telling your story and talking about this world. June the 7th and 8th is when CrimeCon is. You said you've done a few of this from the very beginning, I think Nancy said, Colin.
Yeah, I have. I think I missed one. Or I'm missing one this year in Manchester. But yeah, I've done them. I even had the pleasure and the privilege to go and wave the Union flag at Nashville last year for the CrimeCon USA.
Wow!
And that was an experience and a half. It really was, both in terms of the reception that we got there as Brits, about half a dozen of us, but also, if you like music, Nashville's the place to go.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt about that, right? Listen, Colin, it's great to have you on. I'm sure we're going to speak again on this area. But thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate that. That's Colin Sutton, former senior investigating officer with the Met Police. He led over 30 murder investigations. I mentioned Levi Belfield, the re-investigation of Delroy Grant, the Night Stalker. I mean, just an incredible CV of solving, investigating the worst kind of crimes. It does take a particular person, but you can hear more of his story if you're going to CrimeCon London, June 7th and 8th this year. Check it out online for details. We're back with more from you in a couple of moments. This is Talk.
Well, I mean, look, you use the word influence. You know, the word influencer is something that absolutely everybody, you know, is familiar with. And the ironic nature of this is, you know, there's no such publicity, you know, there's no publicity, there's bad publicity in some terms. And, you know, NECAP as a group are getting lots of attention in the media at the minute, but it is bad publicity in that it further acts as an accelerant for bringing this to the attention of young people, some of whom may feel alienated or isolated for a variety of reasons.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've done it again. I didn't plug myself back in. Never. That's what have I got? 3 times I've done that, I think. 3 times. I'm going to blame. No, Adam's saying at least. No, I think it's 4. All right, okay, I was underplaying it. Very easy. Kevin O'Sullivan, listen, he's got records in this kind of area, believe me, particularly with headphones. If we nip out, you see, you have to plug yourself back in afterwards. And then I nipped out and went for a Haribo. That's not like a euphemism. Sounds like it. It's Haribo Friday at Talk Towers. We always have a little pot so we can nab a couple. And then, you know what it's like? You come back in, your brain is somewhere else. I want to read this out from Lynn in Portsmouth. Lovely to see Colin Sutton on Talk. Watched all his documentary on TV. He should be an advisor to the government, so trusted and respected. You do wonder when it comes to experts, when the government say, oh, we're speaking to the best. Do they? I'm sure sometimes they do. But yeah, you shouldn't be leaving someone like Colin Sutton, one of the most respected police investigators that there has been, so widely respected in his work. Let's talk to Matt in Cheshire. Reference those elections, Matt. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian. What a glorious day it is here for the beginning of the end of the status quo.
Yeah, well, it feels like that, doesn't it?
It's happening. I think anybody north of Birmingham knew this was going to happen at some point in the next few years. The winter fuel allowance was most of it. I think where I am, everybody just sees that as the most disgusting thing anybody's ever even thought of. Mm-hmm. Nobody will ever forgive Labour in the north, even people that have voted for them for generations.
What made that worse, Matt, of course, was that a lot of the MPs, campaigned, holding up signs saying, we will never take away your winter fuel, and we're accusing the Tories of planning to do it. So it had a double effect in that respect.
Yeah, as with the WASPy women as well. Yeah. They're literally absolutely principleless, if that's a word. Yeah. And can I just say one more thing here? I think there are 17,000 councillors in England. I think 1,700 are up today. Reform have won 500 already. They're looking probably to top maybe 1,000.
Well, they're running, and then they've now got the majorities of 7 councils. I was talking about Kent, my neck of the woods. So they're running Kent now, Staffordshire, Lincolnshire, Durham, Lancashire, Nottinghamshire. This is big, Matt.
The sensible places in the south and the north are all linking up together now, and London is almost a separate country now. Yeah. I think I referenced that to you a few weeks ago. Yep. Well, if this extrapolates over the other 90% of councils next year, Reform are going to walk this election. I don't even think they have to do anything. All they have to do is just
turn up.
Show up. Just turn up, yeah.
But we were talking earlier to I think it was Chris who raised it. Was it Chris who raised it? No, it was Ian who raised it, who said, what about those metropolitan areas, though, Matt? Because they are troubling. You get into Manchester, you get into London, and then you do stumble across a few hurdles if you're a right-wing party.
Birmingham City Centre, London and Manchester City Centre will stay Labour. Yeah. The rest of the country, they'll carry on with the pro-Palestine stuff, and the rest of the country will just... we might as well just
that's what gets these people out of bed in the morning, isn't it? You think, really? I mean, is this how our agenda is set? But I fear it might be. Listen, Matt, I've got to run because the news is upon us. Peter Cardwell's here. You've been brilliant, Matt. Have a cracking weekend as ever. Lots to talk about here. Kenny in Edinburgh says Colin Sutton should be in charge of policing in the UK. Him, Norman Brennan and Peter Blexley would make me sleep easier at night, knowing that my family would be safer under their common sense approach. Yeah, I think a lot of their common sense approach was kicked out years ago. Oh, no, we don't do it like that. Well, new methods of doing it. Let's get some people from university and they can help us. Talking of university, Peter Cardwell didn't go to university. In fact, didn't go to school. There's a little unknown fact.
That's right.
Never had any form of education.
It's just a sort of care.
None whatsoever.
It's a sort of care in the community style thing to have me.
Yes, indeed.
As part of the program.
Now we can finally announce that Peter's here on, shall we say, a special ticket from.
You're very nice.
I jest, of course. You went to one of the finest.
What a 24 hours it has been.
Unbelievable.
Incredible. Really, really interesting as well for political nerds like you and me, Ian. We're about probably, I would say, maybe 2/3 of the way through the declarations, and the story is one of Reform UK. They say, and Nigel Farage says, we're now the official opposition in this country. I think that's maybe a little bit sort of over-egging it to some degree, but nonetheless they've done really, really well. They have a new MP, they have a new mayor, they've got, as we speak, 507 councillors. I'm sure that will go up as there are 505 still to declare. The Lib Dems have done okay, the Conservatives have done badly, and Labour have done badly as well. Keir Starmer says, I get it, but does he? Is a big question. And we're going to ask right throughout the show, we've got Labour guests, Conservative guests, Reform guests, Lib Dem guests. We're going to ask, you know, where are we politically in this country? Where are we going? Could Nigel Farage become Prime Minister, for example? I mean, that's something we were talking about.
Matt in Cheshire just made that point. He said, you know, looking at some of these results, and I know, you know, people always go, well, it's just a snack. You know, we've had quirky by-elections forever, okay? There's always that odd one where you go, oh my God, look who's won it. Martin Bell's now an MP, or whatever. We have those moments, but this feels very different. It feels very different when you consider that Reform UK are now running Kent County Council, Lincolnshire County Council. I mean, these are
loads of different councils, 7 or 8 different councils, and we will see that's a big change, and we will see Reform UK having executive power, running stuff, and then people can hold them to account and say, well, have you run this well? Is Andrea Jenkins a good mayor? Are these councils running well? Are things going differently in those councils? Or do people feel there's been some sort of change? They've plenty of time to do that between now and the next election. 4 years. It's a lot of time to do good things. It's a lot of time to make mistakes as well. It'll be really, really interesting to see what happens and how the political landscape looks in a few years' time. It looks very different today than it did yesterday.
And I think, you know, there was a sense that yesterday that, you know, what we were going to see is Reform picking up some council seats. That was kind of how it was talked about. They might just get this by-election in the bag, but even that's going to be iffy. People